Alrighty, good evening, everyone. This is meteorologist Timmy Albertson here with you. For those of you joining in on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, welcome. Normally, I do the weather chats, but we got some ongoing severe weather right now. We'll just take kind of a little bit of a look at that and what all is going on. So, without any further ado, folks, let's take a look here at our good friend, the latest radar imagery. Now, for those of you who might have been kind of following along with this already, you'll probably notice that a lot of the activity right now is over around the St. Louis area. As a matter of fact, they had quite a few number of storms that kind of really quickly developed. The atmosphere right now that is around this area is very conducive for supercell thunderstorms, which, if you remember from last night on our weather show, we talked a little bit about, supercell thunderstorms, and they are, the big ones that produce obviously that large hail, but they also produce tornadoes too. Oftentimes at the same time. And that's kind of what we've been seeing around here, as a matter of fact. Now, before we kind of dive into this a little bit here, let's just kind of zoom out really quickly. It might be a little tricky to see here, so let me see here if I can't maybe filter off some of these reports here. There we go. And basically, here's what we got going on. We got kind of a somewhat of a long tornado watch here. It might be a little hard for you to see, but I'll describe for you where it is. It is right now pretty much right over my hometown area, just out there of Toledo. It goes all the way across western Ohio, back through Indiana. There's another watch that includes southern Illinois, another watch that includes southern Missouri, and then we also have a watch all the way down to Arkansas and parts of Oklahoma. Kind of a little bit of a large, what do you call it? Kind of a large type of system here, more or less. Well, I mean, I guess when you think about it, they all are always kind of large here, but a long tornado watch. There we go. But it's actually kind of a mixture of a bunch of different tornado watches. So, kind of the main areas that's being watched right now is an area down around the Fort Smith, Arkansas area. We'll kind of zoom in a little bit there, take a look at what they got going on now. The big thing here that we're going to be seeing probably as we go through the evening hours is likely this is going to start to kind of transition to more of a line type of setup. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit. But in the meantime, what we have going on are these storms are kind of firing up. And again, this is somewhat of a favorable atmosphere for this type of, well, there's a very favorable atmosphere for some of these thunderstorms to end up being tornadic. Now, with that in mind, the problem is that if you're a supercell, you kind of like to be by yourself, or at least someplace that doesn't have your inflow obscured by other rain. So a lot of times in these situations, what we do see is when these storms do first start to fire up, especially in this type of a setup, they tend to bring all hazards, hail and even tornadoes and locally gusty winds. But possibly what we could see with this is it might try to develop later on into more of a line type of setup where we get a bunch of those storms kind of running into each other, and then more or less it just kind of moves as one. That kind of transitions to more of a straight line type of wind situation. But right now, looking kind of like it, hail and tornado. Now, when we're talking about hail, for those of you who might not be from around parts of the Midwest or the Great Plains, we're not talking about, little dinky hail here. We're talking about pretty big size hail. In fact, yesterday we had a 4-inch size hail report, and again we had another 4-inch size hail report again. So baseball size hail, certainly kind of the duck and cover type of hailstones if you happen to be outside during that. But so this is an area that, again, we are kind of watching here. Right now, we do have some storms that are kind of out and about by themselves. And then earlier around the St. Louis area, as a matter of fact, about a couple of hours ago, we started seeing a lot more of these storms kind of firing up here. There's a lot of wind shear going on right now, a lot of really good kind of atmosphere. And whether nothing, is well, I guess sometimes it can be perfect, but long story short, I mean, this is a favorable enough environment that we are certainly seeing some rotation here, especially with that wind shear. So before I go too off track here, right now, this is where a lot of the activity has been in and around the St. Louis area. Now, they got kind of blasted with some pretty large hail a little bit ago, about anywhere from 1 to 3 inch size hail reports from a storm that actually kind of tracked its way through. And right now, that storm that was actually responsible for all of this is now over here. Now, earlier on, this storm was actually predator warned, and it actually looked pretty decent on the radar, but I don't think we actually got the touchdown from that, but it was certainly looking like it for a little while. But then we had this storm down here. Now, again, a little bit ago, it was looking pretty decent. As a matter of fact, if we flip on our good friend, the velocity radar image, we'll take a little bit of a look at this. Now, for those of you who have, seen me show you guys this multiple times before, you already know what this is, but for those of you who might just be tuning in for the first time, the image that you see there on your right, that is called the velocity radar image. This is what we use to look at the winds within a thunderstorm. Greens are winds going towards the radar. Reds are winds going away. So you pretty much only have two options. But what we look for a lot of times, especially when we're dealing with tornadoes, is we look for high values of those both colors right up against each other. Again, a little bit of rotation here with this storm, but again, not quite as defined as it was earlier on. But again, we can kind of see at least a little bit there of a hook, and there is the inflow notch, albeit it is a little, clogged up with some rain right now. But sometimes these stronger supercells can kind of overcome that a little bit. So let's take a look up here. We're moving now into north of the St. Louis area, still in the metro there, but we're going now into Illinois, and we can see we have this little lone guy all by itself. And again, it does have a little bit of a hook with it here. So this is kind of the supercell type of setup here, or supercell type of thunderstorm there. All of a sudden, I can't talk. So basically, what we're looking for here is areas of rotation. Now, these guys kind of get these, very somewhat common shape here of your supercell thunderstorm here. They kind of tend to be bulgy up here at the top, and they kind of narrow down to a little bit of a point. And then the more tornadic ones have a little bit of a hook. We talked about that last night when we were looking at that tornado that was all the way out in Kansas, which was still really impressive, by the way, on the radar scans. It just looked really cool on the radar scan. But anyways, what we start to see here with that mesocyclone is the part within the storm that rotates. Again, supercells have those, and a lot of times just the big hail storms. But the conditions are right, we can just get that mesocyclone to extend down to the surface, and it will begin to rotate. And if it rotates enough, well, it produces a tornado. But what it also does is that actually that mesocyclone begins to kind of pull some of that rain from the core of the thunderstorm down a little bit there. And because there's wind shear, this thing isn't lined up as exactly as you go, completely up. So there is a little bit of a tilt there with that storm. Again, without diagrams, some of this, might not make much sense, but it does for me. But anyways, so here's the thunderstorm here. Again, a little bit of rotation there in that storm, but right now, not necessarily the strongest rotation. Then if we move our way over towards central Illinois, down around the Taylorville area, we have a little tornado warning that is here. Now, again, this is radar indicated tornado warning, nothing really on the ground at this time. It did look pretty decent a little bit ago. In fact, if maybe we're able to pull up the loop here, let's take a quick look here. You can kind of see what I mean a little bit. There was a little bit of a notch there earlier on with this storm. You can see it right there, had that little bit of a hook for it. But if we were to look at the atmosphere conditions here, this storm is actually interestingly riding pretty much right on the boundary of what we would expect, to see our stronger storms here. Again, once you go a little bit north of this, conditions really become a lot less favorable. So it looks like this storm, to a degree, has kind of ran into that a little bit. But then if we go over to Indiana, we have a little bit of a different story. Let's take a look here at our good friend, the Indianapolis radar. Now, much like St. Louis, we have a situation where we're getting these storms to fire up, and for right now, they're generally kind of by themselves or at least isolated. For those of you who like to use weather terms, sometimes we call this discrete supercells. I don't know how a thunderstorm can be discrete, so I'm not too fond of the name, but basically it's kind of out by itself. Again, good news if you are a supercell thunderstorm, you don't necessarily want to be right up against another thunderstorm here. For the most part, though, these storms mainly producing some hail. Now, as we talked about last night, sometimes when we look at these, supercell thunderstorms, well, actually, a lot of times when we look at these supercell thunderstorms, especially these big hail makers, they tend to, again, they have that mesocyclone already. There's already a rotation going in. In fact, it's one of the things you need for some pretty big hail is a little bit of rotation in there. So this storm right now, if we take a look at it, we can kind of see, yes, it does have that rotation. Now, mind you, we're looking a little higher up in the storm here, but still low enough that we consider it lower level of the storm. But naturally, there is a little bit of that rotation, but it's not very strong, at least not right now. So the storm is rotating, and again, if conditions are favorable, some of that rotation might try to tighten up a little bit, and we could maybe try to see it maybe produce something. Now, there was a tornado warning that was in effect down around Bluffton, Indiana, Decatur area. Familiar with this area? In fact, I used to work around this area. Again, prime ground for Trento sometimes. They have their days where you can get some pretty interesting ones in Indiana. But if we kind of zoom out a little bit, we can see higher up, yes, this storm is certainly rotating, but whether or not that rotation is down at the surface is a little tricky to tell. Why is it a little tricky to tell? Well, because here's the thing about radars, for those of you who might not necessarily always be the most familiar about it, is they only are good so far out before the curvature of the Earth overtakes it, and you're not really getting any valuable data from that there. Interestingly enough, this whole area kind of sits right in kind of a large little I don't want to say radar dead zone because that's not the right term. We do have radar coverage, but we kind of lack low radar coverage basically around this area, including all the way back up towards Toledo. So one of the many things that there's a bunch of radars nearby, but none of them right over. So sometimes a little bit of low scan, but this one's still close enough to the North Webster radar site there that we're still kind of getting a pretty decent look at it here. And while its structure here on the radar imagery might not necessarily be the best, we certainly see that there is some rotation there. But again, radar indicated right now haven't had anything on the ground, at least in Indiana, being reported. Now that might try to change a little bit. As a matter of fact, the SPC is actually kind of looking at, pretty much this whole area within that trying to watch is, well, that's why they trying to watch. Conditions are favorable. Now, whether or not this ends up being, there we go. Whether or not this ends up being the major criminal outbreak, but certainly enough for some of these, little localized, and especially if we can get a good supercell all by itself, get a pretty good thing. So this is from the, if you can put that back up, that's actually from the SPC, and that's one of their meso analysis. So for those of you who are, level 2 weather nerd, you probably have seen these before here, but basically these are mesoscale discussions. They put it out. Again, it pertains to watch situations and overall severe weather thing. And again, the SPC is expecting that Southern Illinois is probably going to be, maybe the next active spot here for the next hour or so. But keep in mind here, you'll notice that map there, it does show you a cold front. As a matter of fact, we'll kind of take a look here at the surface chart here, flip it up here for you guys. And so if we could take a little bit of a look at that. This is from the, I should probably put it up. That might help a little bit. Give me a quick second. You know what? Just put that map back up if you could. I planned that out so well. All right. There we go. We got ourselves a cold front that is pushing its way through right now. So once that front pushes through, atmosphere is much more stable. We kind of lose that forcing mechanism with those storms. So if it gives you any indication, the favorable atmosphere is south of that cold front. So again, right now, that's kind of why that area is being highlighted in particular. And again, this is the area we're looking at right now. Then there's been this one particular storm out around the Taylorville area, which again, for those of you, we're looking at Springfield, Illinois, capital. There, here's Decatur, Illinois, not Decatur, Indiana, and certainly not Decatur, Alabama. There's so many Decaturs, and actually, it's really funny around here. Is a lot of these towns in different states, every state seems to have like the same town name, and they're always ironically right by each other, or close enough that it can be confusing. They do have counties too. Anyways, moving rapidly along. Let's take a look here. This guy right now is kind of all by himself, relatively speaking. Again, this is why this guy's been kind of holding up pretty nicely. So let's take a look at the supercell. Yes, absolutely. The most organized supercell, but certainly organized. All right. Basically, what you got going on here is you got that updraft producing very heavy rain. This is where the hail is within the thunderstorm. At least for this particular thunderstorm, that's where the hail is. Again, those high reflectivity values. Again, radar imagery detecting some pretty large-sized droplets out there, which is most likely going to be hail. And that's pretty much what we've been seeing in a lot of these areas is some decent-sized hail. Now, let's take a look at this thing. It is rotating, absolutely. We can see that here on this. But what we don't see at the moment is a very tight couplet signature here, but not to say that there's nothing going on here, because we also have one other little tool that we use sometimes in meteorology. Well, actually, we use quite a bit, and this is actually in terms of radar usage. This is one that's actually kind of, I don't want to say new per se, because it's been about 10 to 15 years, but a lot of us meteorologists, especially myself, when I was younger and looking at a lot of these storms, we didn't have the correlation coefficient, which is a very helpful tool to have. And the correlation coefficient, what this guy is telling us is exactly that. Okay, statistics lesson. You all know your correlations, right? High correlation. Something is similar. or there's a pattern, or there's a trend, depending upon how you want to look at it. Low correlation, these things aren't related. So what the radar is doing, courtesy of dual pol, is that it's actually measuring the size of the objects that are, in the air. So if it's, let's say, a thunderstorm, we got a lot of rain falling. Raindrops going to be mostly the same size. All right, guess what they're going to be. They're going to be mostly the same size. So it's a high correlation. All right, everything's the same. But now let's say we got ourselves a tornado on the ground. And that tornado, let's say, it goes across a town and it decides to take a couple of roofs with it. Well, roofs are a much different sized object than a raindrop. So now the correlation is much lower. And when we start to see a drop off in that correlation, depending upon where it is, because sometimes we can get some bad radar scans here and there, but when we start seeing a drop off in the correlation, that is sometimes a very good indication that we have debris. And if there's debris, well, it's probably from a tornado or a heck of a gust front. But really, these are, good for looking for tornadoes. So sometimes when we have our, confirmed tornado, sometimes it's actually because of these, the correlation coefficient. We can see it on the radar imagery. Now, that being said, obviously it always helps to be able to see it too. But at nighttime, this is sometimes a pretty good indication. And I remember when I was watching the Rolling Fork tornado last year, actually close to around the same time, actually last year. I mean, it was dark outside. You couldn't really see the thing. It was rain wrapped and it was a big F4 tornado. I mean, actually borderline EF5, to be honest with you. But that thing, you could see the correlation coefficient on it. And not only that, but you could see it higher up into the storm. Because remember, these radar images, they're not just scanning in one level. They're going to scan at this level, then they're going to scan at a higher level, then they're going to scan at a higher level. So we're going to, we get those three-dimensional kind of looks here. And then we actually saw the debris from that. It's about 17,000 feet up. Again, sometimes with these stronger tornadoes, we do end up seeing that a little, we do end up seeing debris. Downside is, this time of the year, trees still don't really have leaves on them. Crops aren't really in the fields. And for the most part, it's a little bit more difficult to see. It's easier sometimes in the spring and the summertime when there are leaves on the trees, because those are absolutely, you get enough of those things, absolutely they will pop up on the correlation coefficient. But sometimes it's a little bit tricky this time of the year, unless you've got a really big one or you have one that happened to pass over a town. So that's one of the tools that we use. All right, now you're probably saying to me, we have a drop off right here. Here's the thing. Notice where that drop off is. It's in an area where there's not any precipitation really ongoing. So not necessarily a good signature per se, but certainly something that we would have to watch. Now, for those of you who are nighttime or night owls, like instinctively I am, especially when I used to work in broadcast, goodness golly gracious, nighttime, that's when I thrived. Of course, in the summertime, it's the only time I can go outside because I don't do well in the heat. Anyways, you can't see the tornado, so you got to have a couple of options. The textbook one, get yourself a weather radio. Those are always helpful because they'll have the warning on them. Also, it might help to have your cell phone with you. Now, I know you can turn off some of the alerts, but if you haven't, you can get alerted on your phone multiple times. Hey, it's better than nothing. All right, and then if the tornado does happen, you might lose power. Might not have a flashlight, but you can use your phone flashlight too. There you go. See, there you go. Problem solved. Phone flashlight, boom. And then if you subscribe to America's Weather streaming channel or service, we can even let you know sooner than the TV can let you know. Think about that. Anyways, let's move rapidly along here. All right, we stayed on that storm long enough. Let's take a look down here at our good friend all the way over. And again, this is also kind of approaching a slight little drop off here in the radar coverage. Let's see if there's any other radar that is close enough. Let's take a look down here at our good friend over in the other part of Illinois. Illinois is a very weirdly shaped state when you really think about it. And what's actually really geographically interesting about Illinois is because of that kind of funky shape. It's really long, not as funky as the country of Chile. That's kind of ridiculous, but Illinois, because it has, you got Chicago in the north, and then you pretty much are deep south once you get down to the very southern part. it's not as crazy as Missouri. Missouri is a state that like, I just can't figure it out. Is it a plain state, Midwest state, Southern state? I can never figure it out. Illinois, they've had that same problem, but they just kind of took it to a different level. They said there's Southern Illinois, Central Illinois, and Northern Illinois, all different types of Illinois. So, anyways, take a look at that. You got yourself the Trend Watch that's also in effect from there. Now, with that in mind, I believe that actually potentially, do we already have that Trend Watch that was up? Or yes. So, again, Southern Illinois, there you go. All right, so that is the area that is kind of expected to, as mentioned, kind of be the focal point here. Let's put it that way. Now, interestingly, for those of you who might have been keeping track earlier, Southern Missouri was doing pretty decent earlier too. Think about Southern Missouri storms as they kind of ran into each other, and now we have kind of this, line of storms. Now, this is also interesting though, because one thing that people, that sometimes in meteorology, is, I don't want to say over. It's not okay. That's a bad intro. Sometimes we talk about these lines. We talk a lot about wind. But sometimes with these lines, especially when it's a quantity, it's a QLCS type of line, we can actually get what's known as a spin-up tornado out of these. And sometimes some of our strong, these really strong lines will produce multiple of them sometimes. Derechos are another good one that like to do it quite a bit. Of course, ironically, sometimes with the derecho tornadoes, the tornado winds end up being actually weaker than the tornado winds. Yeah, tornado winds end up being, no, sorry, which phrase? Wow. Tornado winds sometimes in these lines can actually be less than this thunderstorm straight line winds. Anyways, it makes surveying quite fun if you ever get the chance to do that. Survey tornado damage that happened during a derecho. You look for Cyclops. Anyways, so these little guys, we'll have to kind of keep an eye on these. Sometimes we get these little spin up tornadoes with them. Now, again, these are not necessarily like supercell tornadoes, but they're still tornadoes nonetheless. I mean, they are tornadoes, but they develop slightly on a slightly different way, just based on everything else. Again, I'm not going to try boring you here with the scientific explanation of it tonight. But sometimes we can get these little spin up tornadoes. They don't tend to last very long. They tend to be pretty small, but and sometimes they happen so quickly, it happens in between radar scans. And if you grew up around where I did, again, being at kind of a low level radar coverage dead zone, we've had actually had that a couple of times where we've had tornado that happened just long enough. It literally happened right in between two radar scans, and it was never detected until later on. So again, that might be something that's worth watching down around this area. So part of the reason also why that Trend Watch is in effect. And we can see these storms go all the way back down into Oklahoma. Again, they fired up here. No Trend Watch over around this area, but it's interesting though. I will say, kind of interesting that there's not a severe thunderstorm watch, at least for this portion. Sometimes you would see that as a little thing here, but that's interesting. There's not actually a severe thunderstorm watch right here, despite the fact that some of these storms are likely producing hail. But again, main thing right now for those of you who want yourselves a tornado, there you go. Right now, it's going to be especially Illinois and going into parts of Indiana. We'll see how theirs holds up. Let's take a look right now over at our good friend hanging out down here. And I'll tell you what, that thing is still, looking pretty decent here. For those of you wondering where we're looking at, this is Fort Wayne, Indiana. I used to live at one point. Here's Decatur, here's Bluffton. And then we got those smaller towns, Geneva, Huntington's over here, and Hartford City. Let's see, we got Muncie down here. Muncie, I think that's actually the creator of Garfield, I believe, is from Muncie, Indiana. And I think that's where the comic strip Garfield actually takes place, is Muncie, Indiana. Impress your friends at the next dinner party with that fact. All right, so just like Calvin Hobbes was thought to be based in Cuyahoga Falls, which is over by Cleveland, because that's where the creator was from. Anyway, let's take a look here. So again, this guy does still have some circulation on it. But what we haven't seen with this one, at least right now, is a report of an actual tornado on the ground. Now, this is not necessarily a highly populated area per se, but believe it or not, there's enough around that we would probably know pretty quickly if there was a tornado on the ground. If we didn't get one from radar, someone would probably call it. And this area, everything is always a tornado. If you've ever been around this part, everything is always a tornado. Gust of wind, tornado. Tornado, tornado. But you go down around this area, everything's always a tornado. Uh, that was kind of funny, in an interesting way. Everything was a tornado. Anytime a tree branch fell, it was a tornado. Uh, it happened enough actually. There was a scene from if you ever watched the TV show The Middle, one of the early episodes, they had that episode. Tornado came through and it gave them a washing machine. That's pretty great. Anyways, all right, so right now, like I said, a lot of these storms mainly just kind of producing some hail. Now, this is not the hail that we were seeing down around, St. Louis area earlier, and certainly not like what we were seeing in Kansas yesterday. But for this area, this is still some pretty decent sized hail. 1.5 inch size hail. That's pretty decent. That's bigger than a quarter. You'd probably certainly hear that, hitting up against your car as you were driving. So, but again, not necessarily at the moment seeing too much in the way that would indicate that we have, a lot of active tornadoes. Now, here's the thing though. If this starts developing into a line, then we're going to kind of start to lose that probability for those, nice long track tornadoes that we would, talk about when we talk about tornado outbreaks. You can technically have tornado outbreak in a straight line situation if it is a derecho type of setup or a QLCS that produces a bunch of little spin up tornadoes that happens to meet the numerical qualification of a tornado outbreak. Then yes, but you know what I'm talking about here. So that will certainly have to be something to be watched as we go through the evening. But again, my intention for the most part, still over the next, maybe hour or so, is certainly going to be down around Illinois. And I'll tell you what, this storm down here is looking pretty good. Still radar indicated on that. Let me double check a couple of things here while I got it pulled up here. But I'll tell you that storm is actually looking pretty decent, even though we're a little far out from the radar. So we probably are looking a little higher up into the thunderstorm. And yes, so this little guy here, let's talk about this. So let's say you just happen to be driving along. You see this thunderstorm up ahead. All right, let's happen to say right now that you're on what is this highway 15, not 66 and 64, but you're just south of that near uh, Johannesburg. You're driving along, heavy downpour. Then you start getting hit with hail. All right, you can keep driving on through it, and boom, you go about your day, depending you don't have a broken windshield. But let's say that you were driving and you want to go down to Lively Grove. You go through it, you get hit with some hail, and then you turn, and then you're going to run right into the mesocyclone, and then you're going to run into the probability of maybe at least seeing what's known as a wall cloud, which is a lowering of clouds. Typically, that's where we see our tornadoes coming out of, our nice little wall clouds. And they are called a wall cloud because they are shaped like a box. I don't know. Meteorologists aren't necessarily the best naming things. If it was up to me, we call it a box cloud. There you go. That's a picture of a wall cloud. Kind of looks more like a box. In fact, I one time saw one that was literally looked like a box, but you get the idea. Anyways, when you actually look at that picture, you can see the inflow. All right, you can see where the inflow is happening. I can't point to it, but you see that very low part that kind of touches almost, looks like it's touching that telephone tower out there. Again, there's your inflow. And of course, the rain's being pulled around on the backside. And then you would likely see a trinotri developing right out of the middle of that thing or, close to the center. Is trinos, like to be kind of uniform in their rotation, at least a little bit there. But that's what a wall cloud looks like. Now, mind you, with very heavy rain, if it's rain wrapped, you would just see rain, and then all of a sudden you would see rain and trees falling over. But sometimes with those, especially when you're out in the plains, sometimes you can get some really photogenic ones. So this thing is certainly rotating. But right now, again, as mentioned, we don't have any indication that there's something on the ground. Even if we were to flip over to our correlation coefficient, now again, we are looking a little far away now. So this might not necessarily be the best for detecting kind of a weaker trend. Let's take a look here. Like I said, you got to keep in mind, folks, the Earth is round. All right. We're not going to debate that. But for the purposes of this explanation, the Earth is round. All right. And sorry, I know there's flat earthers out there, and I don't want to offend anybody. But anyways, for this explanation, we're going to assume the Earth is round. All right. So round Earth, radar beam shoots out. Right. Well, it's good, it's close to the surface, but the farther away you get from the radar site, the curvature of the Earth begins to kind of take over, and suddenly that radar beam is looking a little bit higher up. Not only that, but eventually the radar beam is going, is looking too far away. All right, so The thing is that you start to get to a point when you're dealing with radars where things become a little too far away. In fact, you could really see that a lot of times, especially when you're actually dealing with trail type of setups. If you look at a radar far away, it's looking way higher up into the storm. As a matter of fact, let's flip on here. So this is the radar out of central Illinois. Right? You can see how fuzzy and grainy it looks here. Again, we don't speak about radar images because that's not how the data is actually pulled up. But we're looking higher up into the storm, at least the data that's coming back to the radar site. So things look a little bit differently. Doesn't necessarily just kind of looks like an awkwardly shaped thunderstorm. But if we flip over to the St. Louis radar, we see a lot more features with it here. We get a lot better idea here. So we're seeing a bit more into the storm. And I'll tell you what, this guy is looking like it's looking like it's rotating and it's trying to get itself organized here. Now, mind you, this storm was actually looking really good earlier when it was around the town of Festus, which is a great name for a town. Festus. Um, there's Eureka right there. Eureka, it's Festus. All right, moving rapidly along. So this storm has kind of cycled back and forth a little bit in terms of, what it's done. And earlier when I was watching this, before we even started this, when I was tracking this, there was actually a little bit of a drop off on the correlation right around Maystown here. So there might have been an actual there was likely a trend that went somewhere near the Maysville area. So this storm certainly has a history of it. But then it kind of lost a little bit of its organization, and now it's looking like it's kind of trying to get some of it back. It certainly looks like, for the most part, the structure of the storm, for the most part, is there, but it just looks like it's missing something. Part of that it might be missing might be a little bit of that inflow notch there. Hold on a second. Sorry, and if you don't say text, you have to respond. Anyways, let's keep it in mind, gentlemen. All right, so looks like the storm still has somewhat of a structure there, but even without kind of scanning the elevations here of this radar, and I'm not even really, I don't want to, yeah, we're not gonna go with that tonight. But let me actually double check here on my own. We look a little higher up into the storm. What I am curious about is if that signature, if how healthy the storm is, at least a little bit higher up. Now, again, storm is somewhat in an environment that is going to be a little bit more like I said, a little bit more favorable, if I can talk today. But let me go ahead and I just want to look a little bit higher up with the storm here. Yeah. So it's still looking somewhat decent, a little bit higher up, but not as good as it was earlier. But one thing to keep in mind here as we look at this storm, notice how there isn't anything down here, right, in terms of precipitation activity. So if this thing can manage to get itself to maybe organize a little bit better, if they can kind of overcome some of the fact there might be a little bit of stuff interrupting the inflow here. It's in an environment that hasn't really been touched at all today. An atmosphere that is somewhat, favorable. There's enough wind shearing going on, enough instability. We might see maybe if this guy could try to cycle. Now, this is what we would consider to be kind of, I don't want to say a long track supercell because it really hasn't been going for too long. But this guy, at least kind of popped up and was really starting to look pretty decent, back over around this area. So it's covered a pretty decent distance here. In fact, if we take a look here at the newer radar scans, what we're seeing here is two things. Number one, that it's looks like it's still trying to hang on up around here. But also we're getting this little notch kind of starting to pop up around here. And we're starting to see a little bit here of a hook. So we could maybe be seeing a new area of rotation developing within the storm. So that would be kind of interesting to maybe watch here to see if that does anything. So now, keep in mind here, folks, that we are starting to get a little closer to sunset. And typically, as we saw last night, not always a deal breaker. In fact, I've seen plenty of strong storms happen well after dark, but, you know, sometimes it can work against these storms. And that's all I'm saying. Not always. Well, yeah, not always, but eventually. I mean, you lose your daytime heating, but as long as you got a low level jet and you got enough instability still hanging around, it doesn't normally hurt it too much. Uh, in fact, sometimes sunset, we do see some storms actually kind of fire up around sunset. A little bit of cooling and it creates this little instability, and whoop, you get a storm to pop up. Again, I could go on. But anyways, we won't go on in terms of what am I trying to say? In terms of ways that thunderstorms can develop and undevelop. In fact, if you ever want to see a thunderstorm die, go up to you can go up to northern Minnesota. Once they hit the lake, they like to die pretty quickly. That's a place. We used to joke when I was at Penn State that, but it's funny though because Penn State is one of the places I've been there where I've actually seen a wall. I've seen a wall cloud basically, and uh, it was actually really fun. One of the best supercell thunderstorms I saw was actually in State College. Other than that, thunderstorms tend to go there to die because of the terrain. But that aside, boy, am I looped up. All right, so this is what I want to talk about. Let's take a look at this guy. So here is a good example of kind of a supercell thunderstorm that isn't necessarily producing a tornado. If you were to go up to this thing, though, you might see a little bit of a lowering at the base. But if we take a look at it here on the radar imagery, we see there really isn't a strong low-level circulation with this thunderstorm. In fact, one thing I do want to double check here when we take a look at this is if there is any circulation, at least a little bit higher up with this guy here. Very faint. So we'll have to kind of watch this though a little bit. But if this thing maybe tries getting going a little bit, it might be an interesting storm to watch. Now, right now it does have a severe thunderstorm warning that's in effect, and part of the reason for that, the reason for that is because of hail. So we're taking a look at this thing. Like I said, it might have a little bit of a faint kind of rotation here, but it certainly has what looks to be a pretty decent sized, a little bit here of a hail core, if you really wanted to call it that. We'll flip on a fun little radar thing that we like to use. It's called the vertically integrated liquid. And what this is doing is it's measuring the amount of moisture in a column of air. When we see high values of that, tends to mean that there's some hail. Case in point, you'll notice if we take a look at the radar imagery on the right, you see a big bright circle. That's probably where the hail is of this storm. Not much hail over here, not much on the VIL. Looks like rain here, not much on the VIL. Pretty high returns, hail on the VIL. All right, so let's see what they're tagging this for about 1.75 inches, so almost 2 inch size hail, which based on the reports we've seen today, not going to be all too impossible. So a lot of times, like I said, you go out to the plains, or you go out to the parts of the Midwest, and you do get these big hail producing storms. Keep in mind, they are rotating. And sometimes you will see a wall cloud, and every now and then, they'll produce tornado when the conditions warrant it. In fact, if the conditions really do warrant it, then we'll see a lot of tornadoes from them. But keep in mind, as like and I mentioned last night during the weather chat and the video we did, is that supercell thunderstorms are that they are very strong storms. They're the ones that produce the very big hail. All right. They're the ones whose cloud tops shoot up, over 40,000, 50,000 feet sometime. In fact, do we have the ability to take a look here at the cloud tops? Here we go, the echo tops here. Let's take a look here. Can I get a reading on that I can visibly see? 41,000 feet right now is what the radar is saying. Now, of course, if we look over here, you'll notice that there's a big gaping hole here. Downside of radar imagery, some of these fun things like echotops and VRLs is they don't really work too well once you get immediately by the radar. Sounds kind of weird. But the way the radar scan things, in fact, pretty much if anything gets too close to the radar, it's a little wonky to read. But there you go. There's your little indication. So these are obviously these strong storms. The question is what separates a tornado outbreak from another tornado outbreak when we're dealing with supercells is that there's enough low level fear and a couple of other factors kind of playing into that to get ourselves a good tornado. I'll tell you what, looking over here right now over St. Louis, boy, they have just been getting pounded, and it is rush hour there. And even without thunderstorms, if you ever try driving around St. Louis, boy, it's unique when it comes to traffic. It's very interesting because it's just all of a sudden you're driving and boom, just a bunch of traffic, and then boom, it's gone. Yeah, St. Louis is one of those cities. Every time I've driven through it, I'm always just like, I don't know where the traffic's going to be today. But anyways, there you go. Yeah, they've been getting pounded with some pretty heavy rain, a little bit of hail here. Most of it, though, kind of quarter size, less than 1 inch from what I was looking at earlier. That kind of tended to be the thing. So going back to our good old friend, the supercell here, hanging out in good old supercell land. Let's take a look here. We'll flip back over our velocity. And yeah, I mean, this thing really wants to. I mean, this storm that I'm pointing to, it's still trying. I mean, but it just seems like every time it looks like it's getting ready to, something comes and interrupts it. But we'll see maybe if that can go away in a little bit. Let's go back over here to Indiana. I want to make sure we haven't missed anything there. We got a couple tornado warnings up around my hometown area. We got one up around Salina, which I remember once tracking a really good tornado there. A couple of years ago, back in 2019 May, there was a pretty decent F3 EF3 that went through there. And again, looking at this is a really good signature. But keep in mind, like what I said earlier, for those of you who grew up in Northwest Ohio, we get tornado warnings quite a lot because we're far away from every available radar site. So we're looking higher up in the storm. The storm might be rotating higher up, but that rotation might not have translated, down to the, surface and is producing a tornado. But, we have kind of, there are some calculations that we do have in meteorology where we can kind of account for that based on what we've seen before in the past. Like, for example, in 2002, when Van Wert had their big tornado, yes, it was kind of in their radar dead zone, but we knew there was a tornado there. Of course, then again, that was a wedge that was a wedge F4 tornado. So that thing was on the rail for a while. I remember that. I remember that tornado. That was an interesting one. Then that same storm went and dropped another tornado not too far from where I was. And then as part of what was known as the Veterans Day weekend, because it wasn't on Veterans Day, but it was on the weekend. Veterans Day weekend tornado outbreak. It was November. That's right. There is sometimes an uptick in tornado activity in some parts of the Midwest during fall and during fall. Uh, yeah. Anyways, so let's take a look here. Again, Findlay, Ohio. That belongs to the National Weather Service office in Cleveland. And even though they belong to the Cleveland office here, again, look, I mean, like I said, we're looking pretty far out here. We're not getting a good, strong signature. Let's take a look here what this thing looked like, though, a little bit ago. Let's see here. What did they pick up? I see it right there. You look really carefully, kind of see it briefly. Right there is a little bit of a notch, and it looks like they saw that based on what was going on in Indiana. They said, let's go ahead and issue that warning. But other than that, at the moment, I don't see anything that would be indicative of an active tornado on the ground. And it looks like neither does the National Weather Service, which is why it's tagged as radar indicated. Uh, Again, tends to be kind of a common thing up around this area. And we're also at the border of two National Weather Service offices. Forgot to mention that part. This is the weather office in Cleveland. This is the weather office in Cleveland. This is the weather office in Cleveland. This is the weather office in Northern Indiana, Northern Indiana, Northern Indiana. This is Detroit, Detroit, Detroit. And then this is Wilmington, which is right down, hold on, right there, Wilmington. So yeah, there's a bunch of different weather offices and kind of a lack in radar, coverage. And there's about 1 million people living around this area, so that makes sense. Honestly. All right, let's go back to our friend here. So again, this guy is certainly rotating. It is producing some decent sized hail. Absolutely, about 1 inch size hail looks to be what this guy's doing. But again, radar indicated. Haven't seen any indication at the moment. Let's just go ahead and flip on our correlation coefficient, though it might not be of much help at the moment. That's interesting. Let's go ahead and kind of take a little bit of a look here. Maybe again, when you look at these, sometimes you just kind of have to. Well, there might have been something on the ground there, actually. They actually did have a really nice one I was tracking earlier today, down around uh, north of Louisville, between Louisville and Cincinnati. There was this one storm that came through. It was right at the end of the line, and it had a beautiful hook echo on it, and I believe it did actually produce a tornado. This thing is still radar indicated, but what I'm looking at here, but again, we're kind of looking a little far out, but it looked like we wanted to use the correlation coefficient. There might have actually been right there. That's interesting. But then again, this is all fields for the most part. So we might not know. That's just really it just kind of lines up. But then again, it might have been accidentally hitting hail. Let's go ahead and flip on the velocity here really quickly. I mean, it doesn't look like there's anything now, but who knows? I don't know. So there, nothing was reported. Typically, by this point, if you're not from the Midwest or the Great Plains, this might not make much sense. But law enforcement loves to drive around and report these things. Maybe trying to give it a speeding ticket. I don't know, but yeah. So typically, you'd know pretty quickly around this area, especially because and if you've never been to this area, I grew up around this area. It's flat. I mean, we were a swamp, and before that, we were under a glacier. So there is no topography whatsoever if you grew up around Northwest Ohio or Northeast Indiana. I mean, it is flat. People talk about Kansas being flat. Kansas is the Rocky Mountains compared to where I'm from. Okay. I mean, literally, it's like a 12-foot elevation. It's about a 45-foot elevation difference from like where I am to the Indiana border, or from where I'm from to the Indiana border. So, I mean, it's flat and there's no trees. This is all fields. So there's no trees. You see it. Oh, yep. And look at that. They did have that confirmed trail. Look at that. Right as we were talking about it. Absolutely. It looks like there was trail that was on the ground. Uh, by the fire department. Told you, law enforcement and first they love to report it. Yeah, look at that. So yeah, very very briefly, it looks like they had a little trail on the ground. And again, we kind of saw that if we looked at the correlation coefficient here. You can see this little drop off that I was mentioning that when I was taking a look at it, right there. That was it right there. Again, not too well defined. Again, we're a little far away from the radar site, but still close enough to pick it up. But right there it was. Following up my cursor here. Let's see if we can do it again. Boom, right there. Right, that little drop off right there. And so it looks like some of that debris probably got lofted up a little bit, might still be there. Whether or not this thing's still on the ground, I'm not sure. They're still tagging it as radar indicated, despite the fact that they had that observation, which tells me I don't think that they think it's on the ground anymore. But it was probably when that warning was first issued. So how about that? Good old Northwest Ohio Trento. They're fun little guys. Let's take a look here. That is gonna be from Indiana. You see, there's a wall cloud right there. So this is from a storm. We're gonna go ahead and take a look at that now here, actually. So this is from the storm. Let's see here. That's Elwood. They have it circled as Tipton. There's Noblesville by Indiana. So I think they're looking at. Correct me if I'm wrong. Keep that. Was that image? Was that image? So it was from around there. Okay. So from the Indianapolis radar, let's go ahead and take a little bit of a look here. So we'll flip over to our good old velocity image here. And according to that image that we're looking at, I'm going to go with the fact that image was most likely from this here. That was a wall cloud, by the way. Again, it's pretty cool. Kind of looks a bit more like a box or like yeah. I mean, I don't really know what other shape. An isosceles triangle, maybe. Uh, but anyways, you get the idea. Of course, we don't want to say triangle because we tend to associate that with Toronto. Hence why that little icon was a triangle, because it's a Unicode that's pretty easy to get to. And so, in fact, taking a look at that, we got a little bit of rotation right here. Again, if that's what that picture was, absolutely. And if it was recent, absolutely. It looks to be yeah, about right here. And it looks like there might be a hook right here, but it's not strong rotation at the moment. That would lead me to believe that there is an active trend on the ground. But again, you guys got to keep in mind, when I talk about these supercells, I mean, there's times where you're going to see features. You're going to see a wall cloud, but then it never produces a trend. Again, it's all about, whether or not everything can line up properly. But a lot of times, especially in these type of atmospheric setups, absolutely, you're going to see wall clouds. You're going to see, obviously, large hail. You're going to see, possibly funnel clouds. I know I've seen some before where they will severe thunderstorm warning it, and they can get a funnel cloud or two out of it, but there's never a tornado warning on it. Sometimes it's just depends on the situation, uh, especially if it's out like in the high plains. I mean, there have been times where there's been a tornado on the ground and they won't even put a tornado warning on it. I mean, no one's around. No, I'm just kidding. They do. But If a tornado happens in the middle of the woods and no one's around to hear it, did it really happen at all? All righty, so let's go ahead and take a look down here. We're going to flip over to the Indianapolis radar. I do want to take a look at that storm near Lebanon here, and ooh, this guy's starting to look good. So that radar image that you see there, same thing that we've been looking at, only we filtered out, the lower radar returns here, so we can kind of just kind of look at more of the core there of it a bit more. But basically, what we're looking at is this guy right here. Now, at the moment, just by looking at this, it still appears that it's still somewhat outflow dominated, but that could change. It certainly looks like it has a pretty decent inflow right here. Again, a clear little inflow. No precipitation here. What's happening is the air is going in here. All right, the mesocyclone is about right here, and then it's going back down to the surface, and it's trying to pull some of that rain back, and that's what gives it a little bit of that hook feature there. Okay, so keep in mind, there's a thousand things, there's a thousand processes going on here. Well, actually, more like a billion, but if you really wanted to name it, there's dozens and dozens of processes going on, in the storm at this time that kind of gives them the shape here. Now, this guy is lifting; it's lifting north towards Lebanon, and I've been to Lebanon before. And for anybody who's ever driven through Indiana during the summertime, you almost always get a tour of all the towns because they have a detour on the interstate because they're doing road construction. Always. But anyways, before, nice little town there, but looks like here this thing is really starting to get itself kind of interesting. We'll keep an eye on this storm here for a few little radar scans. And again, let's see what they're tracking this thing as. It does look like it's moving to the north here. I'm going to see what they're timing it here. Certainly large hail, they got that, and they got to move into the east here at about 50 miles an hour. So what we will do, just for the sake of it, let's go ahead and we'll put a little bit of a time track on this guy right here. See what we can get. All right, let's see here. Can we get I actually want to track it just a bit like this night. We're just going to kind of generalize here. We're not going to go too in depth at the moment with this, but that will put it in Lebanon in about 6 minutes if it were to continue kind of on this track. Now, mind you, folks, for anyone who's ever studied tornadoes, we know they don't always move in a straight line. I know that's how we plot them on the reports, and I have mixed feelings about that. In the era of data points, and being able to do that, I feel like at this point we should be being able to precisely plot, every tornado when we release, when we put them into the archives, but they don't. They just do initial and endpoint, make it look like a line. Tornadoes don't always move in a straight line. In fact, I don't think they ever really do move in a straight line. They move in a general direction, but they will kind of move around a little bit, even, I mean, over small areas. So, and then if you're dealing with a multi-vortex tornado, you got the individual, vortexes within it, and you get some pockets of higher damage than the lower part. You could even see those kind of moves if it hits a more populated area. Anyways, what I'm saying is that, when we time these out, we're assuming it's going to move in a straight line, but keep in mind, it's going to change its path here and there. But right now, at the moment, we're going to track it a little bit to the north and to the east here. But it's up to that Lebanon about 6 minutes. Now, that hail core, though, is probably pretty much going to be right up on it here. This radar scan was about 3 minutes ago. My guess is here is the southern part of Lebanon is now probably starting to see, at least probably, I'd say, dime or penny size hail at the minimum. We'll take a little, we'll see what comes through the reports here. Absolutely. But, man, that is looking really good, at least on the radar returns here. Now, we're going to go ahead and flip that off, and we'll kind of just keep looking at this as it is. Now, the thing, though, that, like I said, it started off decent, but it still looks like it has a little bit of a ways to go. And by a little bit of the ways to go, this thing is certainly rotating, and I'm imagining that if you're there right now, you're probably seeing a noticeable lowering here. I mean, we have our little kind of notch right here. Again, we got our air coming in. We got our, and obviously trying, so it's rotating, and this is looking down into the lower levels here. And so we got that there. Looks to be some side lobing issues though here on the radar. Not, yeah, probably that's not a precise radar return right there. But Just looking at it. See, that's going to be State Route 39. It's going right over. So go out of Lebanon, head right down there. So that's basically one of their main streets. By time we would get our next radar scan, it's probably going to be a little bit over here. So it's certainly looking like, but like I said, right now it looks like it has this issue where yeah, it's trying to pull itself together here. It certainly is, but yeah, it just seems like it's an awkward. Something about it looks like it's a little awkward at the moment, but it certainly looks like it's trying. I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe put a trend warning on that, just based on everything else that we've seen. Going up to Alexandria, we're certainly seeing that storm rotating, but at the moment, let's take a look here. Is Indianapolis right the closest one to that too? Or is it Northern Indiana? It looks like it's going to be Indianapolis. So this guy is also kind of rotating a little bit of a notch right there. We'll see what that maybe does too. So we could possibly be seeing two more type of trend warnings being issued here. Let's go back over to St. Louis while we're waiting for that there. Not person. I go, if you could let me know if the trend warning pops up on that thing. We'll come right back to it here. But I want to take a look at our good old friend here. Oh, new trend warning on that one coming out of Finland. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at that since that's. Oh, they actually extended a warning on both of those. Interesting. All right, now, mind you, this is Wilmington office. I Wapakoneta, and I believe Wapakoneta is part of the Wilmington office. Anyways, so we got two different offices right now issuing warnings on two different storms. So let's take a look here again. This was the one that we watched earlier, and we said that it was producing a tornado. Now, they have the observed tornado on the ground there. Let's go ahead and see if we can't maybe see it on the correlations. Why not? So we know this thing has produced a tornado before. And now we're looking to see if it's got another one and where, oh, where exactly, where is it going to be positioned? So there it was. It might be right in here north of St. Mary's. That's based on what we're seeing here. It's going to be just north. Yep, it's going to be just north of St. Mary's. This thing is generally tracking to the east. So it's going to put it over Glenwood here in a few moments, and we'll keep an eye out. Maybe Wapakoneta. Now, Wapakoneta is where Neil Armstrong's from. They have the Neil Armstrong Museum there. Really cool. They have a moon rock. Um, but again, this is an observed tornado here, and I want to see what they're tagging this here as tornado warning, winds in effect, indicated tornado produces storm, damaging hail, flying debris. Obviously, if there's a tornado, that's going to be something that'll happen. I'm going to double check here on this. Yeah, it's looking pretty decent on the radar now. In fact, actually, we pull it up from the Dayton radar. It actually looks pretty decent. So it's got an observed tornado here, but what I want to see is tag that as. All right, so we got our little observed tornado here. What I want to do, I had a tornado near Mount Blanchard, a little small town there. If you ever come up on route on Highway 30, you go around Upper Sandusky, head over to Crawford and Vin, and you pass the exit for Mount Blanchard, but you never actually go into it, and then you pop it up right there. So let's see what this is. Law enforcement observed tornado at Ohio 37 and Township Road 168, just north of Mount Blanchard. Awesome. All right. So they reported it there, so it might have been right over here. They didn't say if they were looking, well, they probably were looking right at it. So it was probably right here. And let's take a look at it here on our good friend, the velocity here. Now, we're going to have to flip over to our radar here, and they're tagging this one as observed. Uh, and yep, if it is on the ground, it's probably going to be right around here. Now, we're getting back into the Cleveland radar site here. So let's see if we can't pull it up. And that might be it. If they had a tornado on the ground, observed it here, put it there, say it was observed, that might be some debris there. And we can't see very well what's going on down here. Again, like I said, kind of a low level radar nightmare around this area. But let's take a look. We're going to flip over to the Dayton radar. And I'll tell you what, this is also looking pretty decent here, too. So here it is again, just north of St. Mary's. They're still tagging it as observed. We saw that it did produce something back here. So it looked like it probably cycled through again. Uh, let's flip on over. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our base velocity here on the Dayton radar. And so what we're looking at here is a Dayton radar. It's a more localized radar. They tend to like to put these in big metros, especially by the airports. So sometimes these little guys can kind of help fill in the gap. But downside is they don't have all the features of the WSR-88D radar, which is the main ones that we use. But in this case, we are close enough taking a look here at the Dayton radar here to kind of get a little bit of a view of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at, you know what, and take a look on the Dayton radar. That really, right there, north of Salina. Look there, just north of St. Mary's, looking like there it is too. You can see it right there. If it's still on the ground, that's where it is. North of St. Mary's. Let's see. This radar image was recent. So yeah, let's see here. I'm gonna double check what they're gonna tag it as here. St. Mary's, Wapakoneta. So yeah, we're gonna take a look at this thing here. We're gonna kind of follow along with this, and we're gonna see what this guy does. Now we also got to go back over though to Tiffin, Ohio. Ran a cross country race there once. It's a little town, Seneca County. Not very, and apparently see, this is what I mean. You get far enough away from the radar, you get the 20th century Fox lights going on. That's my I'll have to ask my former radar professor, or my well, it was my professor when I was at university, what the heck that was. But again, we're looking at it now, and they're going to be right over about Frenchtown. It's going to probably stay just south of Tiffin, though they are included in the warning. Still observed. So you got two triangles at least right now that they on the ground reported at least. And I tell you what, though, let me take a look here. Sorry, fiance texts again. Always respond to the fiance. All right. So here we go. 1, 2, and then here's an interesting question. Now, so here's what's interesting. Now let's try to watch. Doesn't extend. So here's what I want to see. I'm going to take a look at something here really quickly on my end, but I'm curious. Oh, yeah, yeah. The conditions certainly drop off favorability wise once you get to Cleveland. So, oh my God, that was a heck of a drop off. Hmm. The temperatures are there, but the instability just isn't up around the Cleveland. Well, maybe that's starting to break though. Double check something here. It's the wind shear. Let's take a look at what they're doing there with their mixed level tape up around that area. Okay, so that might start to destabilize a little bit here across parts of Northeast Ohio. What I'm saying is that I'm curious to see if the supercell might hold on for a good amount of time. But we're starting to see some new activity firing up down here. And it's a shame that these two both, I mean, I guess this one's close enough to our Dayton radar that we could, oh man, look at that. Look at that. Right there it is. If there's not a tornado on the ground, there's certainly a lot of rotation going on here. That's still observed. And yeah, look at that. Uh, we are looking at this is Wapakoneta. So what I'm curious about here, that thing's still on the ground. Looks like I think they're going to call it. I think they're putting it. They're gonna. I think they're going to call it a tornado emergency here at this point. Uh, Yeah, so they're expecting that there's a pretty decent sized tornado here actually on the ground just north of St. Mary's. Here's what I wanted to double check here. We got to flip over back over to is this the Wilmington radar or is this going to be the Indiana radar here? Who are we on? We're going to be on the Wilmington radar here. And what I want to see really quickly here, how we doing on the correlation coefficients here? Still check something here. So again, this is going to be coming up on Wapakoneta if this thing holds out here. We saw it on the Dayton radar. Looks like it's going to be right there. So they're calling this. So they're calling this as a particularly dangerous situation, and it's going to be from Wapakoneta. Uh, and unfortunately, we don't have a decent sized scan there. So that's St. Mary's, Ohio. That's emergency management reports confirms a large tornado was on the ground doing damage. So we're unable to see it here on the correlations here, but we certainly saw it on the velocity. In fact, and like I said, we were taking a look at the Dayton radar. We got a pretty good look at it here on the scan. Now, it looks like it's not quite as clear at this moment, but it could still very well be there. It might be rain wrapped. Again, we're looking right at the edge here of this radar's coverage, but it did give us a pretty decent picture. Not that long, just one scan or two ago. So last week they tightened around Glenwood area, just past St. Mary's. So it's already past St. Mary's, but it's going to be somewhere right around here, pretty much going right on 33, possibly heading right into Wapakoneta here if this thing stays on the ground. Now they're reporting it as a large tornado. Unfortunately, we're not there to see exactly how large the tornado this is, but we certainly have an idea that there is something there here. Hailing, certainly hail going on right now down around Wapakoneta. Probably I'd say about quarter size hail at least. Parts of actually the north side of Wapakoneta, just north of US 33 here. So let's zoom out a little bit here. And what I also want to do is so they dropped the observed tornado on the one up in Seneca County and parts of Crawford County and Wyandotte County. We'll keep an eye on that storm there, nonetheless. Here, so we're taking a look here at. Oh, that was a close lightning strike. Whatever that lightning bolt hit ain't around anymore. All right, let's so yeah, we got that confirmed tornado that's on the ground here. And while we're doing that, I want to double check on our good old friend down in Indianapolis here. But we're going to keep up with the storm here. So again, maybe we're checking in is there is an observed tornado that was on the ground, a large tornado. Now we saw it there. The signature, like I said, it's become a little bit more muddy, but it does look like it might still be on the ground here. Let's go ahead and double check. We're going to flip actually back over to our Dayton radar here. I want to see the signature on this thing, but we do still seem to have somewhat of a signature popping up. And yeah, it might still be around probably right here in this little notch. So they're still tagging it as observed. And what we are going to do is we're going to flip on the good old velocity and we are just going to watch it like that. We're going to see where that is right about here. Looks like we got two notches here, but I'm going to go with, let's go ahead and loop this through really quickly here. So it's coming right up on Wapakoneta, right up on the interstate. There it was, just north of St. Mary's. You can see it right there. Certainly that's a good signature. Absolutely something was on the ground. Something might still be on the ground, but it might be in a somewhat weakening state. But it does look like it is going to go on the north side here of Wapakoneta. Let's see here. That's going to be the Sherwood Forest, the Bramblewood Estates, Oakwood Hills area. So we're looking again north of US 33, and going to be probably coming right up here on 166 there on Infirmary Road. Is likely where that is right there. Rain wrapped, not probably going to be able to see it very well. But that is what they are looking at here. And again, it's still there on the signature. We're looking at the Dayton radar at this moment. Again, confirmed tornado. There was a few moments ago. It's being described as a large tornado, though I will say you see that term thrown around quite a bit. But it looks like they are doing a tornado emergency on it, or at least a particularly dangerous situation with it, which tends to happen when there is a decent, a pretty decent sized tornado going in towards somewhat of a populated area. And let me double check something here because it looks to me like they might have actually just as we said it, just dropped it. So it looks like when we were looking at it, the signature did drop off a little bit, but there's still rotation there. This thing is still rotating right there. Again, coming right up here. Now, it looks like they took it off. They don't think it's on the ground anymore, at least according to where we want to go by the National Weather Service's text. That's what they're saying. They've dropped the observed tag, but we still see that signature there on the radar. Now, again, this thing looked really good a few radar scans ago. But now it looks like, yeah, if there was something on the ground, it is probably lifted or significantly weaker at this point, but it still looks like it's going to go right into the north side of Wapakoneta. So it'll be interesting to see if we get any reports out of that. But right now, it looks like it's not quite as defined as it was. Uh, yeah, I mean, look at that. That popped up right there. Take a look. Boom. Right there it is. So here's the report here. Let's see what they tagged it as. Large tornado on the ground. Emergency management reports a large tornado on the ground. Time estimated. Yeah. So we were looking at that. And that was also probably the same one that produced this guy. Now, here's the question. Was it the same tornado? Again, taking a look at that, I would venture to say no, but it was certainly the same rotation. It's these two tornadoes are absolutely related to each other. They're part of the same family. The same mesocyclone dropped these two. So we probably had one, and then it weakened a little bit somewhere north of Salina, and then it re-intensified itself. Glenwood and going right. Yeah, probably might have hit Glenwood and then lifted a little bit, but we're still seeing some rotation here. Whether or not this is a bad return, might see a new area of rotation trying to develop to south of Wapakoneta, but right now it looks like that the location that was there for what prompted that particularly dangerous situation, uh, has really kind of dropped off a little bit. And to my knowledge, they're not tagging it anymore as observed. It's radar indicated. Now I want to double check that. Yeah, so they dropped it. They're tagging it as radar indicated. Also going on across Indiana is, well, not too far away. Again, we're dealing with the same atmosphere. We can take a look at a storm there up around Muncie. It's looking pretty good here too. So we're going to step away from this guy over in Wapakoneta, and let's go ahead and head over to Garfield's hometown. Not the president, the cat. Garfield. Let's take a look here at what we got going on. Now, again, this is also a radar indicator tornado warning. Ooh, that's a pretty good signature right there. So we take a look at this guy here. Again, some of this is a little bit of side lobing going on here. But what we can still make out here is there's certainly some rotation right here, right in this area, south of Anthony, just north of Muncie. This too looks like it's going to track a little bit actually to the kind of the east southeast here a little bit. So let's go ahead and just put a quick little track on it here. Again, we're not going to go too in depth with it, but let's just go ahead and I believe what is it, 50 miles an hour is what they have it as. Double check here. They are saying it is moving. Yep, 50 miles an hour. So we'll put it in for that. Let's calculate it. Let's see what we got here. All right, it's going to be putting it in the following areas here. Mayfield at about 8 minutes, as well as the north side of Muncie here in about, let me double check here, about 5 minutes from now, it'll be on the north side of Muncie. So not much time here. Let's double check here. This is radar indicated, but as we've seen, these guys do kind of spin up a little bit here. Pretty good signature. And I'll tell you what, that's a pretty good signature just north there of Indianapolis, too, here. You're taking a look at this guy right here. Look at that. That's starting to get its act together here pretty good, too. Looks like our Lebanon storm did kind of struggle a little bit there. It's just, it's still got some stuff going on, but it looks like it might have gotten, it just looks like it's not as defined. But this down here is Zionsville, looking pretty impressive. Right now, no tornado warning on this, but Westfield, Zionsville, that's an area we're going to have to be watching here in a few moments. So possibly if that thing continues on. But let's go back over to our friends up here in Muncie. I want to see how that guy's doing. Again, actually, it's coming right up on the Muncie Airport, which is where we get our observations for Muncie from. Of course, we tend to get it from the airport in most places. We are getting some hail out of this too, about half-inch size hail. I'd venture to say I wouldn't be surprised if there was some 1-inch size hail in there at all. Even upwards of, they're tagging it as 2 3/4 of an inch size hail. That's pretty impressive, especially down around this area. This is an area we get hail, but not that kind of that. That's some Great Plains style type of hail right there. This thing, cloud top right now. Let's see here, 45,000 feet. So certainly high enough that those ice crystals or those water droplets freezing pretty good, and then colliding with each other and freezing even more so. Let's go back to Muncie here again. So large hail, and if you want to know where that large hail is, let me go ahead. For those of you taking notes, we talked about our VILs here, and it is just north of Muncie. And look at that. That is pretty maxed out here on the scale. on both scales, actually. So the north side of Muncie here, and I'll tell you what, Muncie would probably have a really good shot of it, as a matter of fact. Now, that being said, here's something I do want to double check here. Let's see here. So I gotta do. I'm checking something on my side here because what I want to see, this thing is really close here. If they even might have a, let me double check something here. I actually want to see if we can pull out maybe a Indiana Department traffic cam from Muncie. I'm curious if there's anything that's pointed up towards Muncie because they'll have a pretty good view. Again, coming just north of Muncie. Now, of course, mind you, it's probably going to pass through here, but yeah, we're looking at the that's pretty good. It's a pretty good signature. That's for sure. Let's go ahead and take another look here. We still got that on the velocity here. Certainly large hail. Still there. Not necessarily the most, certainly not the best velocity return signal, but certainly there nonetheless. I'm also interested in this guy just south here at Westfield. Sorry, just southwest of Westfield. It certainly bears a little bit of watching here too. Again, certainly rotating thunderstorm, but it doesn't look like at the moment there's anything on the ground, at least for right now. Things down around St. Louis. Can we quiet up a little bit? Well, we do have a little bit of fun down around Oklahoma. Let's take a little bit of a look at it, shall we? Ooh. All right, let's take a look at this guy right here. We're going to flip on over. Sure, we got our closest radar scan here. And right here, yeah, a little bit of a notch right there. Radar indicated rotation again. This is out. We are looking just north of Durant in Oklahoma. A little bit of rotation there of this storm. Again, we were talking about this earlier. These storms mainly producing some hail right now, but what's interesting is there's not a watch here, which I think is a little bit interesting. We also got some activity down around the Dallas area, producing some pretty decent sized hail. That's 2 3/4 of an inch size hail down around just north there of Dallas. From Prosper, Frisco. So you're coming down through Denton on I-35. Past they got it's hot there, very hot. This when I was there it was very hot. You go past Denton, and then you come down through. You got the option: do you want to go through Fort Worth or do you want to go through Dallas? And just like Minneapolis, you have an I-35 west and you have an I-35 east. Uh, All right, so let's go ahead and we'll go back up to this storm here really quickly. And they finally issue, let's see here. They finally put up that watch. You know what? Here I am this whole time. I'm gonna double check something here. Boy, it has been one of these days. I'll tell you what. And that's not what we need. That's not what we need. This is what we need. This is what we need. A digital watch. All right, there it is. All right, my bad. I had the switch on from watch setting turned off. That's on me. But otherwise, we've been good. All right. I was gonna say, I was like, no, surprised they haven't put anything up there, but they did. They had it up a whole time. That makes a lot more sense. All right, maybe we put some hail, but again, tracking that area of rotation there right now. Again, still radar indicated, a little bit far away from the radars, but again, certainly producing some hail. And then, like I said, we got this guy down around here in Dallas. We'll flip this guy up here really quickly. Ooh, that's a nice another little one. Look at that. Let's see. We got the velocity image on this guy right here. Look at that. That guy's also rotating now. We're looking just north of Dallas here, north of Richardson, well north of the airport, Dallas Fort Worth there, just below, toward the bottom there of your screen. And yeah, what we're looking at is a little bit of rotation here of the storm here. Taking a look at kind of nice little supercell here. It's got kind of that little classic look here. And this would be the area right here where we'll be watching now. What I'm curious, they have it tagged with possibility of a trail. We'll have to kind of keep an eye on that storm. But let's go ahead. We're going to go back up over to our friends in the Muncie area. Ooh, there's so many storms to look at. Oh, yeah. I'm going to take a look back at Muncie and see how we're doing with this guy. What I really want to see is whether or not we've had any hail reports of that, of, 2.5, over 2.5 inch size hail. Is that from Muncie? 'Cause that's a big hailstone if that's from around the Muncie area. Yeah. Roanoke. All right. Roanoke. Roanoke, assuming Indiana, not Virginia. We have not looked at Virginia at all today. Anyways, you get the idea. Big hail. That's been really the big theme with these storms, both today and yesterday. Is it's mainly a hail thing, to be quite honest. But when you're dealing with this type of large hail, you're also dealing with you're dealing with rotating thunderstorms, and conditions are just right enough that we have seen, uh, quite a few trails over the past couple of. Oh, and look at that! Wow. All right, so we're gonna go back up towards the Wapakoneta area. So remember when we left this guy a few moments ago, we said there was a new area developing south of Wapakoneta, and it looks like it did. So it might have weakened as it went over, as that's the whole storm kind of dropped down a little bit. But look at that. That is a good signature. Now, mind you, we're a little higher up in the storm, so not as much friction going on. But that is certainly a really good signature there. Here's what I want to see. Is there any debris? Absolutely. Look at that. That is a big tornado. That is not your little spin up right there. That is a full-fledged tornado that is on the ground, and that is just south of St. John's, and that's going to pass north of Lakeview again. Driven up here numerous times. You take this big sharp turn here, and there's the exit or the entrance to get onto I-75 if you choose to go down Route 33 that way. Look at that! How quickly that is just sprung up. That is wow. That is a decent sized tornado. Look at that. Wow. Later, this thing is dropping a little bit. So I'll tell you what, if this thing continues on, it's going to be put in, it's going to be put in Lakeview, Russell's Point, that whole area. Now, this thing is observed, and here's what I want to know too. Not only is it observed, but here's what I want to see is how they're going to be tagging this guy. So let's take a look here really quickly. On my end, observed, and they are going to. It's confirmed. We'll see what they do with it here. But I mean, I'm looking at this right now, and we're looking pretty high up here. In fact, what I want to see here is how high up this signature is going. So we're looking even at the Indianapolis radar. I mean, even at the Indianapolis radar, this thing is popping up really well. It's defined here on the Dayton radar, but we're going to flip over to the Wilmington radar. And what I want to see is how high up this is really going to be. And this thing, let's see here, how many? Oh yeah, yeah. This is probably going to be more than a little EF1. We don't know how strong it is. I mean, obviously, the surveys have to be done here, but this is certainly not your little spin up type of tornado. I mean, this is a pretty decent sized, I mean, I would say pretty decent sized, but I mean, it's probably more or less. I don't want to say overly strong, but it's more than just a little spin up tornado here. That's for sure. It's coming right up on. Let's see here. It's going to be passing south of Wayne, so it's looking like it's going to be staying south of 33 for right now. But then it looks like it's going to pass almost right over 33 here in a few moments. It's looking like it is kind of tracking a little bit down here to the south. So, a little nice little trail there. Now, what'll be interesting to see is the damage survey, though, because again, that's trails do not get officially rated until they've been surveyed, and we have damage indicators that we use. The problem is, like I said, this is pretty rural-ish, so not as many damage indicators. So it can be a little trippy sometimes. Seeing some instances where we've had trails that look pretty strong on the radar, but they end up getting a low rating because there was no damage around. So look how quickly that just kind of popped up, just whoop, right there, coming right at the notch there of we're at the end here of Auglaize County, heading out into I believe that's Logan County. double check on that here really quickly, but yeah, who's that going to be for? Yeah, northwestern Logan County. Bell Fountain, highest point in Ohio, right about there. So certainly tracking that way there. Very interesting. Very, very, very interesting here. It's still radar indicate up here, but I mean, we're looking at this here on this radar imagery, and this is, I mean, this is absolutely, it's a confirmed tornado. Uh, don't put the overlying street thunderstorm warning on over it. Could possibly, and we know, hail 1.5 inches. This one is more of a trail maker than it is probably hail. So when I'm taking a look at it here, really quickly because it looks like okay. Past couple scans we saw it was pretty decent. And now it looks like it has kind of gone down a little bit. Now that doesn't tell us much because, like I said, somewhat of a rural-ish area. Uh, might not be much for it to pick up. You know, might just right now just be kind of getting over some leftover corn husks and maybe some tumbleweeds here and there. So a little tricky to tell exactly whether or not this thing is weakening per se, but we certainly know that whatever it is, it's probably still on the ground. And look at that, yeah, this thing is still on the ground. And here's another thing: is this now we got another little notch we're going to have to kind of keep an eye on. So looks like what we're seeing here is, you know, looks like this one I think is a little bit different, but this is the same one that probably that the let me try it again. It's about the same one that did this activity here. So did this one, and then we saw it weaken. New one developed, or just kind of transferred itself a little bit down to the south, and reorganized itself. And now it's here. And then what we could see is this one trying to jump up and eventually replace this. But for right now, this is certainly the one that is on the ground. And we're looking at it now, like I said, we're taking a look at the correlation coefficients there. Again, drop off, certainly picking up some stuff. There you go. We'll see what this does here over the next scan or two. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. It'd be interesting to see what the survey of this one is going to be. We also got that other trend warning way down in the other part of Illinois. We're going to get to that one in just a second. But what I want to do is I want to wait another radar scan here. I want to see if this thing's still going or not. But in the meantime, I am going to take a little bit of a peek. Now, what are we doing? Let's see here. They still got radar indicated in Muncie, so from the looks of it, they probably didn't have anything touched down, at least that we know of. At the moment, yeah. And then we also got that new one, two new ones actually, way down in parts of Illinois. We're going to come to those in just a second here, but latest radar scan showing that strand was still probably on the ground. It is still probably on the ground, just coming up here on the Lakeview area. So again, there's Santa Fe, a little corporate area there, Lakeview. But here's 33 right here. It's a pretty decent sized road. You ever take this? It goes right down through Columbus, and then you can take it and it goes out to Lancaster, Ohio, and then eventually it does actually take you, I believe, down to US 50, which is in West Virginia. So yeah, this is 33. Goes through Bell Fountain, Marysville. They got the Honda has a big plant at Marysville. Here's Dublin, Ohio. Kind of one of those more fluent suburbs of the Columbus metro. Delaware, Ohio. Again, a little another suburb. Again, the Columbus metro is kind of laid out. Well, the city layout is pretty bad. Well, like how it looks corporation limit wise, it's kind of a mess. But so this is the area that we're looking at though. This is Marysville, and right now we're up in Bell Fountain. Again, kind of a rural area, but certainly there nonetheless. And like I said, this too is starting to look pretty decent also. Now again, we're watching that trail. It's right there. You can see it there. Debris lofted up. It was predefined a few scans ago. I mean, it looked really well. And again, when you saw how quickly that thing developed, it just boom right there. So you can see that circulation was making its way down, popped up. Looks like it's still on the ground. And if we can go based off this, it's probably going to cross now into Logan County. And we're going to see here if it manages to maybe pass over the Lakeview area. But again, we got Ohio 235 and US 33 meet here, little interchange there, and it takes you up before it does a sharp turn heading over towards I-75. So, again, one of the multiple ways you can get down to Columbus, Ohio. If you happen to live up around northwestern Ohio, you go down 75, then you'd hop onto 33. The other way you could do it is if you want to go through Upper Sandusky, but sometimes I would. And look at that, it's still this thing is still going. So this is you know you can argue what you could define as a long track tornado. Typically, long track tornadoes tend to be the strong ones. Let's see what they're going to do with this here. Tornado warning, damaging tornado radar, confirmed tornado radar shows tornado debris in the air. Absolutely, I would agree. So it is observed right now via radar. It'd be interesting to see if we can actually get any reports here. But again, kind of somewhat of a rural area. So might not be many until we get maybe closer towards the Lakeview area. We'll kind of have to wait and see. Obviously, my guess is we have, as I've already joked about tonight, that law enforcement around this area, they love to look at these things. And that's actually where most of our reports have come from so far this evening is from law enforcement. So they'll let us know pretty quickly, or at some point it'll come down through. Now, mind you, like I said, we kind of have to wait a little bit for that. Now, here's what the other thing, too. We still have that active tornado warning that is in effect also over around Seneca County and northern Crawford County. We're going to kind of come back to that one too in just a moment, but I do want to stick though at the moment with this one around the Santa Fe area here. So we're taking a look at it again. Template showing up very nicely. We are looking at. I'd say we've crossed. I think we're still in West Central Ohio. If you wanted to be politically geographic about it. But we're getting very close to Central Ohio now at this point. Here's what I want to take a look at here. We're going to take a look back at our velocity. And let's take a look here. This is a slightly different one. This is a storm relative velocity. And yeah, I mean, this thing is really, really kind of booking it here in terms of how it wants to look. And very, very well structured here. Yeah, I mean, that's like I said, that thing's still got to be on the ground. We see it here. Look at that. I mean, this thing is whipping around. I mean, mind you, folks, we're looking really, really high up, and but what I do want to see here again, and we're also watching this notch right here. This is another area that is going to have to be watched because my guess is what's going to happen is this will probably maybe be the new one to take over. We'll see though. They're pretty close. And this one would have more of a track, maybe going towards Lewistown and maybe towards the Huntsville area. But for right now, the main focus is just north of Bellefontaine, sorry, going north here on 33. So the warning again is right before the first bend here on 33, and going right over towards the Lakeview area, Indian Lake. A lot of signs for that up around West Central Ohio. A little kind of a tourist spot there, and it's going to cross right over it. If it is there. So, we'll have to kind of wait and see. Indian Lake State Park. Again, I think this thing is still, they're still tracking it here. Let me double check here. I just want to see if there's any new update on the warning itself. It's confirmed tornado, damaging tornado. So, yeah, so now it looks like it's been more than just confirmed by radar. It looks like it has been, no, not quite yet. Regardless, we'll know here soon enough. But I mean, look at that. That is a really good signature again. So, like I said, we showed the velocity radar. I mean, this is the rotation. You got high values right here of winds going towards the radar, winds going away from the radar here. About what? I got that at 25, 27, so about 50. You got to add the gate to gate shear together. So again, we're looking at maybe that 100-mile-an-hour or so. But again, we're looking a little bit higher up into the storm also. And like I said, you have to wait for the damage survey. It's without actually visibly seeing it and seeing what all it's doing at the moment, you can't really tell you if this thing is an EF5 or this thing is an EF0. And again, how it goes in the record books is based on the damage. We use the damage to estimate the wind speeds. There's been some argument about that because there have been times where we've actually been able to measure tornado winds using Doppler radar, but we use the damage, to do that. And there've been a couple tornadoes that some would say were EF5, but just depending upon the damage. And we actually have a list. I mean, believe me, we have a criteria list. We have degree of damage of all types of buildings. They did a whole revamp of it back in 2007. and it also works good for straight line winds. But so, oh yeah, there's a whole process going to these, and it won't be until tomorrow at the earliest that we start getting an idea of how strong this thing. Well, we'll know if there's any damage, but in terms of official information, as to how strong it was, we wouldn't know until you know sometime tomorrow, probably at the earliest. My guess is here is the Wilmington office is going to be down there, is going to be up there pretty quickly, uh, sometime during the day tomorrow because no, that's how it works. All right, so let's take a look here. This thing is still on the ground. We're going to flip back over to our correlation coefficient here. So again, we're looking north of Bellefontaine right now. It does not look like it's going to be making its way towards Bellefontaine. I think just based on the current trajectory that we've been seeing overall, it does not look like it would do a quick drop down to the south. Stranger things have happened, but I think with the way this is looking right now, it's probably going to do a little bit more of a track kind of to the east southeast here. So it could be putting it up around the Huntsville area. Uh, Here, just a little bit, New Richland, same thing. But I think for right now, at the moment, it looks like it's going to be staying away from Bellefontaine. Now, that's this one though. But as we saw here on some of the scans here, it's looking like there might try to be something trying to maybe get a little bit better organized right here. So with that in mind, that one might try to track a bit closer to Bellefontaine. But for right now, the main one is this thing right over Lakeview, Indian Lake State Park, all of that right there. And now that it's going over Lakeview, we're seeing another little jump here we're seeing another little jump here in the correlation coefficient there, and it's kind of dropped off a little bit more there. So again, it could be picking up damage very much so at this point. There's no trend warning that's actually in effect. Arlington, Crawford, Upper Sandusky, just to the north of this. I'm going to take a quick look at that on the radar here. But we're going to stay up here with this one over Lakeview because again, that is a confirmed tornado. I mean, and this guy's been on the ground now for what 10 minutes now or so. So it's certainly holding its own. Conditions are good for it here, but I mean, look at that right over there. It is. So, yeah, we're still seeing it there. Locked in that debris up here. Again, low correlation coefficient because we got a bunch of different sized objects. Does look like it's not going to be affecting probably parts of Hardin County, which is here in Kenton. It looks like that warning is just it looks like the main activity is just going to stay south of that. Now, with the way it's running, though, it could stay maybe kind of parallel, but I would say Roundhead not probably going to be in it. Kenton obviously not going to be in it, at least with the way this thing is tracking now. But what I would like to say is, again, Jackson Center, Logan'sville, DeGraff, Bellefontaine, what I would be interested in seeing is if this tries to maybe get itself organized a little bit more here. So we'll flip back on over this here to the, and they've readjusted the trend warning because of that. So they're going to let this one expire up here around Roundhead. And this is going to be the new one to take over. Again, kind of runs parallel here with the Hardin County line, at least somewhat parallel. And that thing's still on the ground. I mean, that's still a signature. Look at that. I mean, that is a pretty decent signature. Gauge to gauge shear, probably upwards about 100 miles an hour, maybe a little bit more than that. So again, this is not your little EF0 here. And is that a picture of it there, Trino, on the ground? And Muncie, Indiana. Muncie. So it looks like they did have one on the ground, or eventually over in the Muncie area. Let's take a look here. Is that recent-ish? Now, this certainly was a funnel, but it's still tagging it there. But we'll come back to that one here. But for the moment, I do want to stick with this guy because, I mean, really right now, ongoing, this is probably one of the bigger ones, we'll say from this guy down here around New Washington coming up on Willard here. So again, got a good signature here. Let's tip him. We were talking about the storm a little bit ago, kind of weekend, but now it's gotten right back up. Look at that. We'll flip on a correlation coefficient, and it looks like this might be our guy right here. Right here, coming up on New Haven. Again, still kind of somewhat of a rural area, but again, a lot, especially in this part of Ohio, there's a lot of these little towns spaced out here and there. So yeah, they're taking that other one as a damaging trend, the one that we've been looking at. We're going to come right back to it here, but just want to get this one through Willard, New Haven. That area here, we're looking north of the Mansfield area right now. This does not include Mansfield. It's again, these again, we're now Huron County here. This is that's kind of the main town in here on the again, this is on the ground now. As we talk about this one in particular, I mean, the one that's coming up here out of this guy's only going here for a little bit. This is coming out of Hancock County going into Washington County. A little bit of location that was mentioned there, but this was kind of the main big idea that we've been talking about. It's this one right here. Now, that is radar indicated this new warning, but the original warning is still being tagged as observed. And again, we see it right here, just north of Russell's Point. Going to kind of track here now. It looks like it's going to try to cross over 117, Highway 117. I believe that actually does it turn into a LiDAR road up in Lima? Yes, it does. So it turns into a LiDAR road all the way up there in Lima, but it's not going there. This thing is moving away from it. New Richland, Huntsville, that area. If you ever take 117 down, you could do that. Mind you, it's a one-lane highway, but if you're coming out of Columbus or you're trying to drive, you can take 33. There's the Huntsville exit, and then you're on this one-lane highway. You better hope there's not a truck in front of you. And you do that all the way up to Roundhead, and then you hop back on to, oh man, you go past Roundhead there. Yeah, and eventually it'll take you into Lima, but because it's really, oh no, because you take that if you're trying to get to 30, because it's really weird that, anyways, it's just one of those things that they still got to deal with. Look at that thing. That is a big Trento in Wapakoneta about 10 minutes ago. This is the one that we are looking at here. That is a big Trento. And yeah, taking a look at that thing, I mean, you can see how it's pulling the rain around it, gives it that shroud. I'll tell you what, that's a pretty big Trento. I mean, that is on the radar scan, that's about what I expected it was going to look like. Uh, some type of a wedge trail, but you can't say that without really being able to see it. But based on what we were seeing on the radar, absolutely, that's a very fantastic picture. And you can see, Ty, I want you to take a look at this picture too. I mean, this tells you a lot about what we're dealing with. Again, it's mid-March, no crops in the field. Those are all, last winter's crops. That's pretty much your debris, though, the leftover corn husks and everything. There's not really much leaves on the trees right now. And so unless it hits a structure or goes over one of so it can be tricky sometimes. And there's another angle of it. Very beautiful structure there. Yeah, it looks like a between stovepipe and a wedge type Trento, whether you want to assign category to. But that's not your EF0. That's a pretty decent sized Trento. Looking at it there, you can see that forward motion there. The front end of it here looks to be a little bit lower. Got that forward motion going on there. See how it's kind of looks like it's kind of tilted there just a little bit, but man, that is, and it's funny. I always tell people, where I grew up in Ohio. I mean, you don't got to go to Oklahoma to see big Trentos. We've had plenty of them. So this is, again, that one up near Wapakoneta. So that was from a little bit ago. We were tracking that one that was going towards Wapakoneta. It looks like that's not currently this particular one, but it was part of the same circulation. So from what I saw, I don't know exactly where that was taken. But my guess is it was probably, because let's see, it was kind of sunny in that first picture, or at least bright outside. That's probably, could have very well been this one. But again, without knowing exactly where it is, then again, it looked like it should have been more of this one near Wapakoneta. But you get the idea. That's what we're dealing with here. One of those two was that, but my guess is probably this one. But either way, they're from the same parent storm and everything. So looking at it now, we've kind of lost a little bit of that. We've lost a little bit of the debris, but then again, that it just went over a lake. So that explains it. But I mean, looking at this, and this is still really well defined. I mean, that is, and now it's not. So last radar scan it was, but now it's looking like it's kind of dropped off just a little bit. So if we were to kind of time that out, we started tracking that thing when it was, boy, we had it all the way back. So Freiburg all the way down to about here. That's a pretty good. Let's see here if we can't. Let's see what we can do here. We're gonna about here. Yeah, that's a pretty good. A pretty good. It's a pretty good track for sure. All right. So that was that trail. Hey everybody, how you doing? All right. So in case you wanted to see me up close, now you have. All right, let's go ahead. We're going to go back up to this guy here, this observed trail. Again, we were looking over at Willard here, New Haven, southern Huron County, kind of a somewhat rural area. There's your little hook right there. It's still being tagged as observed. We're going to go ahead and flip back up to the velocity. Let's see what we can't get out of this guy. Uh, let's take a look. Yeah, we still got the signature there. There it is, wrapping around. So this is where it is. It's pulling some of the rain back in. Looks like it's picking up a little bit of some extra stuff here. This is it on the velocity image, but this is not a good velocity image. Again, we're kind of at the edge here. What radar, actually? I'm curious. It's pulling out of the Cleveland radar. Jason, on that damage, that is Selma, Indiana. Is that the from that this guy right here? This observed trail that we saw down here and coming out of Muncie, Indiana. So when we were looking at that other one up around Indian Lake, we also had a second one that was ongoing, and that was coming out of Muncie. So it looked like if it did happen, probably touched down just past Muncie. Uh, and you can see it right there, how it's hanging out right there. There it is. So I went over farmland, Parker City, Selma, right there. I picked up some of that debris there. So we saw that photo there. I'm not quite sure what exactly that was on the in the photo. Whatever it was, it's not there anymore. Um, but let's take a look here. What are we looking at? I gotta look at this thing up close. Assuming that is a let's see, is that a mobile home perhaps? Yeah, some snap trees there, so that's certainly not your EF0. Not an EF. That could have been an EF2 perhaps, perhaps at least. Uh, it's interesting though because when you take a look on the radar, it's not quite as impressive. Without knowing exactly what that structure is, it's a little hard to tell. Looking at the trees, they're kind of snapped off. But if they were hardwood trees, that would kind of make a little bit of sense. But and we're looking at it here on the radar signature, and whatever it is, it might still actually be on the ground coming up on Winchester. Let's take a look here. Yeah, they're still tagging it as observed. Here's what I want to do is I want to see this. We got kind of two big things that we're watching. We had that one that we were watching over Indian Lake. It looks like the circulation on that one kind of weakened off a little bit. Surround warning is still in effect there. Now we're looking at the one out of Muncie. Now we were looking at this one out of Muncie here just a little bit ago. And what we saw when we were looking at that was that there wasn't anything observed at the time, but it looks like by the time it got to Selma area, absolutely. Something was probably on the ground. So what we are going to do here is, so you're looking at Winchester here, Muncie, and this is going to be Jackson Center, Ohio. So that might have been, that was probably from the one earlier on up around here, Jackson Center. Jackson Center, it should have been right up around, there it is. So that was the one that we were just watching. That photo that you just saw was this one that we were tracking. That's still kind of trying to make its way through. That one right there is the one that we were watching up here before it went over Indian Lake. The one that we're looking at now is going to be this guy coming up on Winchester. So Winchester Cathedral, pretty good song. Anyways, not gonna do a song and dance for you, but uh, there you go, Winchester. So let's see here. We had a little bit of a debris signature that we could see about right here. So here's what I want to know too. Are they tagging this thing as, let's double check something here. I'm going to keep that up. And I want to take a look here what they are going exactly with this. They have it observed. Confirmed tornado was located near West Winchester Moving east about 40 miles an hour. Weather spotters, yep, there's a Trento. Trees and homes were reported damage. So, yeah. So, this is the guy we're tracking right here. So, it's coming right over Winchester. And if it holds up, it'll pass near Union City. My guess is at least at this point, based on the directions that we've seen, uh, it'll come close maybe to Union City, but it looks like it might run more parallel with East Greenville Pike Road here. So here's US 27. There's Winchester. Union City's a little one of those kind of small little towns in Ohio, but sorry, yeah, right up on the Ohio-Indiana border. We will kind of keep an eye on that here too. But again, it was looking really good. It passed over Muncie. Kind of didn't have anything at least confirmed. Here was our guy that we were watching right now earlier coming out of Lebanon. That one just kind of seemed to have lost some of its oomph here a little bit. And then we got this guy down here, tracking all the way down here in parts of southern Illinois. And looks like we don't have anything confirmed right now, but those storms definitely look like they're holding out pretty good. So now the question is going to be, southern Indiana is going to start becoming maybe some of the part of the focal point too, not just Northwest Ohio and Northwest Ohio. Because we were watching Southern Illinois earlier. Still got some ongoing stuff there over the next, like I said, probably hour or so, and then we're going to see a lot of this activity from Southern Illinois kind of moving into Southern Indiana. We'll have to see if it's still at that same intensity, but this has certainly been up here in northwestern Ohio. Certainly been very, very, very active evening down here. We've seen not necessarily now, mind you, all this has been happening in an area where we don't have, the best radar coverage. And I say that because, again, we're kind of somewhat far away. So, it's right at the edge of a lot of some radar's capabilities, but at least what we have seen, we've been able to see them pretty decently. Now, PBS warnings. In effect, right now, up and around Southern Huron County, again, we were looking at that one too earlier on. It was looking really good. Let's take a look at it here. Let's see here. If we could trust this may be our signature. We'll loop this here. Again, large Trento. At least was probably reported here at one point. Let's see here. Where are they going to tag that? Probably about right there near Waynesburg, just past the New Washington. Let's take a look here. If we can't get ourselves a good velocity radar imagery here, right there it is. Absolutely correct. We got. And it passed just south of New Haven here. So it looks like New Haven ain't going to get New Haven and Willard aren't going to be seeing it, but it's just south, heading right over New Pittsburgh, going into Plymouth. Absolutely, I can definitely has the signatures of a pretty decent turnout. Now again, this is going to be out of the Cleveland office here, observed, and they are calling it PDS, particularly dangerous situation, and it looks like they're going to be calling that for possibly New Haven. But right now, I mean, we're looking. That's a really good signature. I love Ohio Trentos. Maybe I'm biased because that's where I grew up, but man, we get some goodies down there. I tell you. I guess some good ones. So really quickly, focus on this one we were tracking up around Bell Fountain. It looks like it has signature a little bit here. I'm going to go back up to that one here. But what I do want to see, it's still got the rotation with it. However, it doesn't look to be quite as defined. There it is. It looks like it has kind of weakened off a little bit, but we saw that picture. We saw those couple pictures. It was certainly a wedge Trento. I think the one of them might have been from the first one, and this was the second one, technically that's the third one, if you want to go out to the storm there. But certainly seeing that signature still there, still some rotation. We'll have to keep an eye on that here, see if that thing tries to recycle back up. My guess is it probably will try. The Weather Service in Indianapolis is continuing that Trento warning for Randolph County and East Central Indiana. It's just to the east there, the Muncie area. We saw the picture there too. They're also putting that as a PDS. Weather Spies confirmed that a Trento was located basically just northwest of Winchester. And it was moving to the east at about 40 miles an hour. So that was the one that we were taking a look at just a few moments ago. They've also extended that warning into, I believe that's Darke County. Uh, I believe that's Darke County, Ohio. And that they've also taken that with concern. Now, let's take a look here. Do you have a picture there? You have a picture of it? I do like to see pictures of tornadoes. Uh, but anyways, let's take a look at this bad boy here. Let's see what we're dealing with. So what do we got? We got yeah, those two PDS tornado warnings right now. One of them is going to be for the Greenville area. We're looking here just east of Muncie, still seeing pretty decent circulation. Let's see here if we're still seeing much here on our debris. And there it is right there. And so, absolutely, yes. Now, again, it's going to get very close to Union City. Whether or not it'll miss Union City is going to be a little tricky to tell, especially if this thing maybe tries to occlude back into the storm. That could pull it somewhat northerly. Right now, it's looking like, let's take a look here. It has been tracking kind of easterly. Uh, let's see here. Oh, it is tricky to tell, but it's right about there. So it's going to come very close to Union City. Like I said, whether or not it's going to hit Union City is a little uncertain at the moment here. But here's Union City. There's some damage from that. This is, or sorry, that was from the one that we were tracking earlier, Wapakoneta. Again, not quite sure what we're looking at in this one, but that is it the mobile home park? Oh, that's going to be, oh, yeah, those aren't those are, I mean, what do you, that's the mobile home park. Let's see, those trees are pretty snapped there. That's some dig. Yeah, that's probably good. Hey, Michael, send me some of these images if you email them to me, because I'm going to pull out the damage indicators maybe later on and kind of take a look at some of those and see if we can't analyze what's going on here with some of those. But again, it's pretty hard to tell without knowing exactly what we're looking at. But I mean, absolutely fantastic. I mean, fantastic weather event here up here in Indiana and Ohio. I mean, this is shaping up very fascinating. Uh, uh, so again, we're looking just south here, Union City. Like I said, this thing is going to be passing. I mean, it's going to graze. If it misses, it'll probably try graze in Union City here. Again, normally we like to put tracks on this thing here, but you got to keep in mind this thing just first off just developed. The storm's kind of tracking, a little bit to the east southeast. Like I said, I would have a hunch it's going to miss Union City to the south. But the question is going to be by how much. For right now, it looks like Union City won't have but then again, as soon as I say that, like I said, these guys wobble, and I'm going to straight line. So this is going to be coming up right up on Harrisville. It's going to come right up on Union City. That's about, like I said, I mean, that thing's on the ground. Yeah, I mean, so here's Union City. This is what we're talking about right here. Union City, right on the border here. Here's the Trento right there. We can see it on our correlation coefficient map here. There it is. A nice little drop off. It's certainly picking up debris. If we flip it over to the velocity, you can see this couplet right here lines right up with that. Here's your outbound winds, your inbound winds. Nice little rotation right here. And from what we saw on those pictures, um, let's see here. And this is Winchester, Indiana. So, oh, was this there it is. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. It's a few minutes old, it appears, but looking at that, it's like a little cone tornado there. And that's picking up a lot of dirt, but it's hard to tell without being a little bit closer to it. But looking at that, I have to peer out at the screen. That's a pretty good one. Fascinating. Now, the question is when, let's see here, that was 8 o'clock. We said 8 so that was a little bit ago. So, anyways, that picture that you saw is from the same thing that we're watching now. Now, whether or not, uh, where exactly that was taken, but this is Winchester right here. So we just saw it. And here it is here. Now he's picked it up here again. So that was probably a very recent. Well, let's see, it's uploaded what 8:01. So yeah, I mean it's probably pretty good here. So this is a confirmed trail. Yeah, we see that. We know it's confirmed. But the question is exactly there it is right there. Look at that. There you go. And here's a condensation funnel. It's picking up quite a bit of dirt. It's got those open fields, and so it's picking up that dirt pretty easily. And that thing, yeah, that's awesome. And so like I said, we were tracking it right up towards coming up on Union City here. But like I said, the question was going to be, I mean, like I said, right now it's looking like I said, it's still looking like it might stay a little south of Union City, but not by much. And this is not a big town either. So they also got that VDS that's in effect up around the Ashland area. So let's hop over to that one really quickly. We'll come back to Union City here, but yeah, let's go ahead and hop back on over to this guy, West Man. Oh, excuse me, sorry. We're up here. Yeah. All right, let's take a look at this guy. All right, so we are tracking pretty decent trail right here. My goodness. Let's take a look at this thing. We've got our circulation on. It's a little bit muddled here, but it looks to be that this is it right here. We'll loop it here really quickly. And this is going to come up, there it is right there. Do we have a decent, let's see here if we can get a better view here from the storm relative. So there it is, right there. Look at that. All right. South of New Haven. So we were talking about this one earlier. Uh, Coming up on New Haven. Uh, yeah, that's a pretty good return. And if this thing holds up, and based on what we've seen tonight, this thing might be on the ground for a few minutes here. But if it were to continue, Ashland is also included in this warning. Ashland County. This is Richland County, Mansfield. Those of you who like the movie Shawshank Redemption, they filmed at the Mansfield Reformatory. This is Mansfield, right here in north central Ohio. Small little town. Well, not a small town actually. It's like a small little city. Uh, and then here's Ashland. They filmed a couple of scenes of that movie actually over around the Ashland area too. Even though the movie's based in Maine, and it's funny because no one speaks about Maine. So moving rapidly along, let's take a look here. Well, our Greenwich. Where are we looking at here? Very dangerous, half-mile wide tornado on the ground, Huron County. That's what we're looking at. This guy right here, half-mile wide tornado. That would probably explain, yeah, this drop off. So that is yeah, look at that. And that's gonna take it to, let's see, up ahead is Worcester, uh Orville, and Amish country just south of that. But this is what we're looking at right here. So again, they're saying it's a half-mile wide tornado, and we are looking at the so they're tagging this as a particularly dangerous situation. Emergency management, yeah, and so they're absolutely, they are taking this thing pretty good. We also, again, as mentioned, so we're looking at what, about a half-mile wide trail. You can see all the debris of it here. It's probably getting right about there, launching that into the air at a pretty good height. I'm checking to see here, maybe if we can't see exactly how high up it's going. Take a look at the Cleveland radar here. I want to see if the Cleveland radar is, or not the Weather Office radar, but the yeah, it doesn't show up that well. All right, let's take a look at this thing. This is going to be well, let's see here. This is going to be Hancock County. Wow, look at that. Confirmed tornado in Hancock County at 8:30 p.m. Look at that thing go. All right, so we got our good half-mile wide tornado right here south of New Haven. And then this was the one, my guess is, if you could flip that image back up, the one that we were looking at in that photo, it's Hancock County. All right, so that was this one probably right here. That was reported about what, an hour or so ago. Uh, so yeah, so that storm has since moved on, and it's right here in northern Wyandotte County. It doesn't have a tornado warning on it right now, but we'll see if that thing tries to spiral back up. Here's the one that we are watching. Again, this nice little hook came right off of it. You can see it looping there. Zooming in a little bit here, you can see there it is, right there. And it might very well be rain wrapped at this point. We see the debris is still pretty much there. Here's the Treno report that we have got. Half-mile wide Treno crossing State Route 103. That's what's reported. We'll see if it really was a half-mile wide, but typically that's a big Treno. And certainly not an EF0. Let's put it for you that way. Here's the debris on it. We can see it right there. Touchdown, and then here we go. So it would have been about right. There we go. So this thing has probably been on the ground for a little while. We've been tracking it here. I mean, look at that. Shiloh coming up here on New Haven. That's pretty good. 10-mile wide trail. Look at that. A recent scan here. Look at that. Yeah, you can see right here. There it is. Look at that right there. Probably right over Shiloh, just north of Shiloh here. So it went right over Plymouth and then crossed Ohio 61, went right over Plymouth. And now the question is it going to be going towards Greenwich, or is it going to kind of keep tracking a bit to the east here? We're going to come right back to that one. I want to take a look at our good friend, the one that was down here in Union City. I want to see how that one's doing. There it's still on the grounds. It looks like it just scraped Union City, just right down to the south. Again, told you it was going to be if it was going to miss it, it probably wasn't going to miss it by much. All right, this is a photo coming in from Wapakoneta, Ohio. That was that picture that we were looking at earlier. Well, that's a house, or is it a mobile home? That's the question. Hard to tell. I mean, that certainly though is some pretty significant damage. Uh, if we can find out what that is a picture of, if that was a house or if that was a mobile home, it does make a little bit of a difference. But based on what we saw, like I said, obviously we were dealing with a very strong trend. And typically in meteorology, we like to consider, strong trends EF2 or above. And so that's most likely what we've been dealing with here, not only with this one near Union City, but the one up in Wapakoneta that we were looking at, and the half-mile wide one being reported all the way over in parts of Huron County. So again, right now it looks like Union City just missed that trail. It might have scraped by just. I mean, like I said, as I mentioned earlier, if it's going to miss it, it's not going to miss it by much. It just kind of clipped maybe the southern part here, right up on the state line. Fascinating, fascinating. So there you go. Keep an eye on this guy. This guy's been going for a little bit here, kind of a little bit of a long track. Treno still observed. Greenville also up in the morning. Oh man, look at that. That thing's still going. That is still going. That is, boy. Hillgrove, Sharps Crossing, Union City. Especially for March in Ohio. A little early. Anyways, that's a just missed Union City, and now it's still tracking here. So they're also, yeah, it's observed. They're particularly dangerous situation. I mean, this thing's been on the ground here for a little while. We're going to go back up to that half-mile wide one here in just a second, but I mean, this thing's been on the ground since Winchester, Union City. I mean, this isn't, like I said, this isn't your little spin-up trail here. This is not like your little QLCS type of spin-up trail here. I mean, this is a pretty. I mean, this is a supercell here. This is a pretty long track, possibly very strong trail. Again, we won't know officially until obviously the morning when the surveys are going to be conducted here, and without looking at some more stuff. But again, Shiloh, that's the trail that we were looking at there earlier. So yes, we got the half-mile wide trail part with it, and this is the one that you're seeing there on the screen. Is this guy right here? And so it was a half-mile wide trail, as well as 2-inch size hail. So we don't know that, but yeah. Trying to man, here's some hail for you. 2-inch size hail. Yeah, I mean that's like I said for this area. That's pretty big size hail. So it looks like it might have weakened off a little bit. Here's still some of the debris hanging around though. Let's take a look. So they're reporting it to be about a half-mile wide trail. We were watching it here. So this was it. You can see how it hooks right there, goes right over Shiloh, and so it came out of about Bloomville, Likens, Ohio area. Attica, New Washington is potentially where it touched down, just south of Tiffin. Somehow I ran a cross country race there a couple of times when I was in school, junior high actually. I just remember it was very hot during both of those. All right, let's take a look at some damage here. We're losing some walls. That's going to be at least an EF2. Uh, if we're missing some walls here, we'll see the yeah, that's gonna like I said, that's gonna be at least an EF2 if we're starting to see some of those walls out. Now that yeah, it's certainly also probably lost a lot of its structural and structural support there. It's interesting though. Look at that picture. It's interesting. The roof. The roof looks to be completely untouched, but the walls are gone. Fascinating. Very fascinating. At least from what I could see, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I could see, the roof looks to be. Look at the chimney. The chimney is still intact, but the walls are gone. Interesting. That's a very interesting photo. Thank you for sharing that one. Whoever took that picture, that's a very interesting picture. Uh, the roof is there. The chimney is fine. So I mean, unless they maybe what could have happened, it could have been an older house, and maybe the roof was redone a couple. Maybe the roof is not part of the. But still, I mean, the fact that the walls are gone, but the roof is intact is very interesting. All right, so we're tracking that one south of Greenwich. Looks like so we saw it pretty good here, but I mean, there's still at least the potential here that this thing might still be on the ground, albeit maybe in a weakened state here. You see how the colors just kind of drop off a little bit, but it'd be a little too early to tell at this moment. Based on what we're seeing here. Now, again, they're tagging it as radar indicated anymore at this point, but we'll come back to that. See if this thing maybe tries to recycle again. Now, let's take a look at this storm too. So we were talking about this one. It came out of Hancock County, Findlay, Ohio. Very familiar with that. Very familiar with Findlay, Ohio. As a matter of fact, I got family from Findlay. Down there was there quite a bit. In fact, I remember when the derecho went through back in 2012. I was down there not long after, like an hour after that. And the damage is pretty impressive. I estimated about 90 mile an hour winds. They lost about half their trees in Findlay that year. That was what 13 and a half, 14 years ago now. Boy, it's gonna fly. All right, let's take a look here. And let's go back to this guy here coming out of yeah, so it looks like Archona was no longer on the ground. The one that we were watching that was coming out of Bellefontaine, but the rotation is absolutely still there. This thing might be ready to produce another Tredo here in just another minute or two. I mean, it looks like it's tightened up again. Let's see here. We had one on the ground as we were talking about. Right there. It looks like it kind of went away, but it might be back. Could try to recycle here a little bit. Here's our one in Winchester that we've been talking about. We were talking about that one. They're still tagging it as observed. It just missed Union City, Ohio, not by much, but when we were looking at it, it literally just missed Union City. A little bit more difficult now to see here on our correlation, but that's it right there. So it looks like it is still on the ground. The question is now how much is it going to pass? Looks like it's been tracking generally east. So right now it looks like it might be trying to miss Greenville. Greenville's a little bit bigger than Union City. But it's right over Sharps Crossing. But if this thing nudges a little bit down to the south, I mean, that's going to put it very close to the north end here, north of 36, north of 571 in Greenville. So, yeah, that's going to be watched very closely. But right now, this thing still looks like it is on the ground. And in fact, I think they're still tagging it as observed. Absolutely, yeah. So now I will say, looking at it, it's not quite as defined as it was earlier, but it is still there. So this thing might be trying to weaken now a little bit. But as we've seen tonight, they cycle through and they cycle through. Let's take a look here. Yeah, I mean, you could see the returns here from that picture that we were looking at. One of the ones that we had up was from around this area, I believe. This was also another confirmed trail: Walnut Grove, West Mansfield, Bell Fountain, uh, Bell Fountain. Anyways, yeah, and now it's coming up on the on Marysville. And again, like I said, Honda's got a big plant here, somewhere up around this, somewhere up around Marysville. I can't remember where. I believe you pass it though when you go through. But I mean, this thing's about ready to cross over 31 now. Again, still radar indicated, but I mean, this thing's looking like it might be trying to recycle again here. So it might not be done with this storm either. Let's take a look here. Is there anything on the ground? Here's another photo coming to us from Plymouth, Ohio. All right, let's take a look at this one. Plymouth, Ohio. That is going to be some roof siding or something tangled up there in a tree. That would be my guess, unless anybody has a different guess. Let's take a look here. Plymouth will pull it up here. See if we can't maybe pull it up here on the good old radar here. Plymouth, 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 Plymouth. There's Shiloh, Ashland, Polk, New Haven. Where was Plymouth? Oh man, here I am, the geography guy, forgetting where Plymouth, which one Plymouth was. Oh boy, there's so many towns in Ohio. Hey, you can't remember it all. Well, good picture. Uh, so it's like some roof siding. What it might have been was uh probably could have been picked up a little ways away, especially with these stronger trails. We tend to see them, drop stuff at a pretty good distance away. And so that's what that could have been. Again, it doesn't look like anything too major. Well, not Minnesota. I need Plymouth, Ohio. As I want to double check. Ah, yes, yes, yes. That's what I thought. It is this one up here. All right. So that photo that we saw there came from Plymouth, Ohio. Plymouth is up around here. Well, well, now this is anyways. Well, we won't get too in depth with it. But yeah, coming in from Plymouth, Ohio, certainly a very interesting situation. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Now, notice something. They've extended the Treadle Watch uh, to include Akron, Kent, Canton, but not the city of Cleveland or Cuyahoga County, but they have included Lorain and Elyria, Medina, and Worcester and Falls County, which is on this country. Now, it's very interesting because the watch originally did not extend this far out. So my wondering here, and I'm going to double check some stuff on my end. Um, a second here. Sorry, fiance text, got a reply. All right, let's take a look here. Sorry, you'll have to see whatever was up on the screen. Embarrassing. All right, let's take a look here. So, yeah, it looks like they have extended that watch a bit. And I want to take a look here to see how we're doing atmospherically here. Things are stabilizing at least any bit. And they are a little bit, but here's the thing. I think part of the reason this has been extended is because while these storms are weakening, they might still be holding out long enough. And based on what we've seen, we have seen, again, these storms kind of overperform a little bit, perhaps, this evening. So there might be that thinking that perhaps it could, these storms might take a little while to weaken off. Uh, that's what I'm kind of going with here. Sorry, I just wanted to double check up on one of the things on one of the watches. I wasn't ignoring you all. All right, let's take a look here. All right, so it does look, based on what we're seeing here on the radar, that our good friend has weakened. Let's double check something here. What I'm curious about. Looking at here though, this might be just the debris kind of hanging out. That's trailer. That is a big trailer. That might just be the debris coming back, or it could just be a faulty scan here. Take a little check here. Yeah, that is pretty weird. But anyways, does look like for the most part, this thing is, at least this particular trainer is done for the moment. But we'll see here maybe if it's wants to maybe try to recycle it. Now we're going to go down to the Columbus area. And we're going to have a little bit of an interesting time here. Now, earlier this was an observed trainer too, but this one looks like it has since also kind of tapered down. But now let's go back over here to Union City area where we've been tracking a pretty trail that still looks like it's going. Now it's north of Greenville here, so it is kind of holding on to that kind of easterly, east-southeasterly track. So it did pass north here of Greenville, but in all honesty, it is still cranking here. We also got a new tornado warning that is in effect down in Newcastle, Indiana. That's looking pretty interesting too. Let's put on the velocity here. Take a little bit of a look. There certainly is some rotation. Right now it is radar indicated, but I'd be curious to see maybe based off what we've seen in parts of Ohio tonight, if this thing might try to maybe get a little bit active here. There. We also got the tornado warning that is down in Marshall. Again, radar indicated and another radar indicated one there. All right, per scan traffic. Anyone with medical experience needed to assist victims in Logan County. Triage is located at Indian Lake State Park. All right, we were looking at that earlier. Indian Lake State Park. Let's take a little bit of a look here. We were tracking that pretty big trail that was making its way past Russell's Point and Lakeview. This is Indian Lake right here. All right, so that's the area they're calling for in Logan County. So, again, pretty big trend that went through there earlier that we were watching. Wapakoneta, we were watching the one up here, and then we saw that new circulation pick up, and then it dropped its way and went through about this area, and then eventually it did lift. So, what we can recap from this part right here is we had a pretty decent supercell, made its way through, produced a tornado. A tornado might have weakened somewhere north of Salina, and then and then maybe a new tornado formed. I don't think it was on the same tornado because it looked like there was a drop off on the radar. But so regardless, either one long tornado or two tornadoes, but that then made its way up towards Wapakoneta, but then the weekend. And then what we saw on the radar was we saw a new area develop of rotation, and that thing really took off and went all the way down from about here through Santa Fe, Lakeview, Indian Lake State Park, and then tracked off a little bit before eventually weakening itself. That's what we were watching with that. So for those of you about, well, we were doing that about a half hour or so ago, but that was the one that we were watching there. So we have at least 2, 3. So it was the same storm, just had a slight, its rotation kind of regrouped at just slightly south. So it looks like Wapakoneta missed it on on a technicality. But regardless of the fact, there is that there was either two tornadoes up there in Mercer County, or it was one. But regardless, it weakened by Wapakoneta, and then we had a new one develop, and it went right through Russell's Point, and that was a very strong one that we were watching. The other one that we were watching was a storm that made its way out of Tiffin, Ohio, had very clear indicated rotation that moved through, produced what was at least a trail on the ground for a little bit. Then we had yet another supercell that developed. Excuse me, sorry, my bad. This guy came out of Hancock County. All right, produced this little guy right here. All right, you saw a photo of that one, kind of a little skinny trail there out of Hancock County, and now it's currently going through Bucyrus. Then the big one, the half-mile wide one, at least how it was reported, was eventually kind of came out of the Tiffin area. We were watching some track activity around there. And then that trail tracked its way through Attica, Willard, New Haven, and Greenwich. It looks like it has kind of weakened off a little bit, but that circulation is still there just north of Ashland. We'll see if that tries to recycle a little bit more. Then, while all that was happening, we were watching yet another tornado that came out of the Muncie, Indiana area. We first picked it up. Well, we didn't look at it too much because we were focused on the other ones, but when it did look like it was producing a pretty decent sized tornado, we did kind of flip back over to it. And it was, again, it kind of got itself organized up around this area, north of the Muncie, just north of Muncie, and then it kind of tracked its way through and made its way all the way over here to Union City. Likely had a very large tornado on the grounds at some point. From about Winchester all the way to at least just south of Union City. I mean, it just missed Union City by a very, very slim margin there, just to the south. Now we're seeing that the rotation is over here. This is one of the first now we've seen the radar indicated tag recently with this storm here, because again, it was observed for a while. So at least one tornado made its way through. Now, there might have also been one around the Selma area. Whether or not that was the same one, we are not sure, at least at the moment. My guess is the Selma one was separate from the Winchester to Union City tornado. My guess is those two were separate, but from the same storm. Now, so again, we had one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, at least seven tornadoes so far. Now, mind you, folks, listen, we're looking at it here through the radar. All right. Keep in mind, this still has to be officially surveyed. Not only does this have to be officially surveyed, but we're going to see the tracks. They're going to go out with drones tomorrow. They're going to go through and they're going to take a look at everything. So we can't really speculate on how strong these tornadoes were based on the pictures that we've been seeing. It's likely that some of these main ones that we've been focusing on, EF2 at least. But then again, like I said, it can't get its official rating until the damage has been surveyed. That's what we use to survey the damage. And again, we have all these things in the weather world that we actually use here. One of them is our degree of damage indicators. And degree of damage. And let's see here. I just want to see if I can really quickly pull up a sample of what we're talking about here. So they go out and they will survey some of this. Everyone, I apologize here. What we're just going to do is see here. See if I can't maybe get some of those things that normally I have them. Let's see here. Do we have it? Let's see if I can show you what we're talking about. So this is what we got. So I'm going to flip this over here for a minute. And Michael, if you could keep it on the radar here really quickly while I distract everybody. Let's see if I can't get this thing up here for you all. And what I want to do here is see if I can't get this up. So this is what we show. Oh, I'll take it back. You can come back to my radar. All right. Go back. No, not the radar. There we go. So just really quickly here, this is what we mean by degree of damage indicators here. So basically what they do is they're going to go through and they're going to look for specific type of damage. For example, one or two family residents, type of structure, typical structure, and then we have, of course, our damage descriptions. We have a degree of damage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And here's the expected wind bounds and all that stuff. Now, of course, we will survey everything that we can possibly get a handle on, mark it, map it, and go from there. Now, other things have to be taken into consideration: structural integrity. Is it an old building? Is it a new building? Is it up to date? Is it not the best construction. All of that stuff has to be taken into account when thank you, when when they survey that stuff. But it does just give you an indication. All right, is this thing observed yet? Let's take a look. No, no, no. But yeah, I am interested though in this guy right here, just past Newcastle, because it's in a relatively similar environment to what we've been seeing going on back here across West Central Ohio. So I want to keep an eye here on this little guy. So we're looking here at Newcastle, Indiana. We're about what would you say, about hour or so east of Indianapolis on the interstate, depending upon how fast you drive. This thing has a pretty decent signature to it, and well, what I'm going to look for here is right there is our notch. So here's the question: is this thing producing? Can you see it perhaps on our correlations here? It might be a little tricky to tell, but let's see here if we can't maybe get a quick little look at it. And hang on a second. Uh, Good evening is out of these things. Look at that. Look at that. And this thing looked really good a few scans ago. Let's see if we can come back. Look at that. See it right there. Look at that. Yeah, I think that thing also probably dropped trial too, even just looking at it a little bit. That must have been it. Somewhere around. Well, very difficult to tell. Regardless, though, we'll keep an eye on that. We'll see how this thing tracks for a little bit here. It's starting to look like it is starting to get a little bit better organized. Well, it already was pretty organized, but we'll keep an eye on this thing here. So they got Trento observed, and that is going to be for Greenville, Versailles, Bradford, Covington, Newport, where we're looking at here, Versailles, Ohio, Covington, Ohio, Hale, half dollar, and yeah, they're observing that. Okay, so let's take a look here. Right here. That's our friend again. Alrighty, I thought that looked familiar. And whoa, we got to take a look here at our good friend. Let's see how our little guy's doing. And we are let's see here. Um so they tag it in as observed. Let's pull it up here on the velocity here really quickly. And I need to flip over to the Dayton radar. And there it is, right there. So this is what we're looking at. There's that little hook right there, looking a little bit better here. Right there. Take a look at that. That is fascinating. Horatio, sorry, Webster, right there. This is what we're looking at here. So again, it's the same one that dropped that pretty big, that pretty decent trail that we were watching around the Winchester Union City area, and now it looks like it has cycled back through again. And look at that. That's probably going to be, well, they're calling it observed. And so now we have to see here how long this one will be on the ground. Let's take a look here. Can we not get there? It is right there. Here's our correlation coefficient. There it is. Just touched down Horatio. Let's see how this thing does over the next few moments. So, anyways, yeah, and this thing, if it does track, it's going to get very close to Bradford. If it's not there already, it'll be there very soon. Bloomer, Clayton, Covington, absolutely, yeah. I'd say Covington would have to be keeping an eye out here too. But for right now, let's see here. Stay north of Greenville. This thing has kind of been tracking more east than east southeast. If that makes any sense. It does have a little bit it has an easterly track, but it has a very slight southeasterly curve to it. So again, if I get very close to Bradford here, we'll see if this thing, really gets any bigger. Which, based on what we've seen tonight, is entirely a possibility. Bradford and then Covington and all of that. So again, right now, this is what we're dealing with. This looks to be what? Probably storm number 2. Oh wow! Look at that. Yeah, this thing is are they here's what I want to see. Are they let's see how I want to see how they're tagging this thing too. Are they gonna tag this as a PDS too? That's what I wonder. It also still got that trial warning that's in effect up around going into Delaware County now, back in Ohio. That's the one we were looking at earlier. Uh, but here's the thing: they got a confirmed trial flying debris. Right now, it's observed, but doesn't look like they got PDS on it yet. But they might hear pretty soon. I mean, look at that. So, I mean, look at that. There it goes again. That's fast. I mean, it is a very good signature here. I mean, here you can see. I mean, here's your. I mean, this thing is rotating. Got its inflow here, right there, swinging right around. I mean, this is a very good mesocyclone. Uh, it's not having any problem at all. Now, here's what I'm curious: if this rain might affect it a little bit, but that might be far enough away. We'll have to see here. Uh, but for right now, that thing is definitely on the ground, and that thing is definitely, uh, yeah, that thing is certainly producing trout. Let's see here if we can't pull it back up on our scan. There it is, right there. Again, kind of a rural area here. Might not be as strong as the previous one, but we won't know for sure. Because I'll tell you what, it looks a little bit better on this particular radar, at least on the velocity, than the other one did. But then again, this one isn't looking as much on our CC here. But then again, rural area, you know, we can't speculate. But what we do know is there's likely something. I mean, there's certainly something on the ground at the moment. And based on what we've seen, might be on the ground for a little bit more. Again, we have really seen quite a few. I don't want to say, like I said, long track rhinos. And, it depends upon how you want to use the definition of long track. Uh, I think typically what we did 20 miles or something like that, but it varies. Uh, we've seen a couple trails get pretty close. We've seen a couple of wedge trails, at least from some of the photos that Michael's sharing that he's been finding. Yeah, we've seen quite a few wedge trails. So, I mean, certainly the event itself has not failed to produce. Um, but so we can't speculate on whether or not this is a big trino or not. But based on what we've seen, it probably is not an EF0. All right, it is probably certainly something. Uh, so let's go ahead here, Bass. I want to double check to see how this guy's doing here around the Worcester area. Millersburg here. You go north on I believe what highway was that again? 83. Yeah, Worcester, Ohio. You got Ohio State Sky Campus there. Uh, Old Worcester. This is Amish country right here, and then this is Coshocton County. And then one of my stations that I worked at for quite a while was the Zanesville station. So Muskegon County there. Let's take a look at this photo here. What do we got? All right. Indian Lake. Oh my, yeah, that is. Well, see, again, we don't know really what we're looking at here. Is this a? Let's see here. Yeah, let's take a look at some other photos. So I know this is kind of a touristy area, so certainly got. I mean that that could be EF3 at least. But the thing is I'm looking at it and it's hard to see because obviously you can't go and walk around in these damaged things. As I'm looking at this picture, you can't really go around and walk. You don't know if there's wires down or something like that. But I mean, we're not quite sure what that structure is. Does it happen to say, Michael? Are you able to find anywhere what that structure is? Uh, I want to say it looks like a restaurant, but I don't think that's right. But it whatever it is, it's certainly damaged. Uh, why compare when you can save? I don't think that's the right that is the right time to be advertising jewelry. But let's see here. So this was actually in Lakewood or Lakeview. So this is right, yeah, right by Indian Lake. I'm looking at that, and like I said, I'll just speculate based without knowing much. It definitely looks like I would definitely speculate that as an EF3 damage at least. All right, we got a another little guy here. Yeah, I was gonna say that certainly looks like at least EF3 damage. I mean, some of those trees looked, pretty. What would be the word? Stripped a little bit. So Piqua, Locaton, Observe, Trento, Piqua, Troy. Yeah, that's the one that we were just taking a look at, our good friend up here. So yeah, not the same one that you saw pictures of. The one that you saw pictures of, that was a different one that was just up here to the north. It was from a separate storm that we were tracking that went through Mercer and Augalaize County and then into Logan County. The one that you just saw up there on the screen is this guy right down here. Again, observe Trento. We've been tracking these all evening. It has cycled up again. Look at, there's the hook, Bradford. And let's see here if we can't maybe get some velocity on it. There it is, right there. Take a look at that. So here's your Trento. All right, so here's your storm. Now we're looking at a different radar here. We're looking at the radar that doesn't give us as many options, but it is a lot closer. And look at that. Remember last night we were taking a look at the one over in Kansas? We were taking a look at that bad boy, and we were got rain wrapped, and it looked really. That's kind of what's happening a little bit with this. I mean, it happens more often than not. It's always fun when we can see it on the radar, especially when it's nearby because it gives us good scans. All right, so that's what we got going on here. So there's our tornado. It is pulling in some of that rain from the main part of the storm here, kind of wrapping it around here a little bit. There's the inflow. Again, so right now it appears that everything is running smoothly within the thunderstorm. Again, kind of has that little bit of a little hook there. We loop this through a little bit, and we use this radar. So there's our hook right there. You can see how it just hangs down there. So this is what we call a hook echo. A hook. We didn't start seeing these on radars until I think probably the 50s. I believe the 50s is the earliest we really saw them, and uh, and never. And then I know during the super outbreak in '74, we had a really good look at them on some of the radars down around Cincinnati and Louisville from the Xenia tornado back in '74. I had some pretty good ones there. This thing is on the ground again. All right, SBC, slight risk. There you go. Honestly, at this point, lines up pretty decently. What's interesting is the enhanced risk. I think where a lot of these stronger trails were expected was going to be down there around Arkansas and Oklahoma. And it does not appear to have shaped up quite as much. Now, I haven't looked at the radar down there, so I guess I should probably check before I start talking. No, they got some stuff ongoing down there. But their situation, they've just been having a lot of run-ins. They've been having a lot of storms that are rotating, but they just keep running into each other down there. All right, but in the moment, though, there you go. We are looking at a tornado that is on the ground just north of Covington. We probably went right over Bradford, as a matter of fact. And now it's getting close to the town of Piqua. There's a rest stop here on I-75, Piqua, Ohio. Then there's Troy. So this is kind of like your last stop before you start running into the Cincinnati-Dayton Metro. I think there's also one in Troy, too. But anyways, just Piqua. That's how you say it, Piqua. Piqua. One of the few cities, I think, in Ohio that has a Q in it. Um, and it's 5 letters. 2 for 1. All right, so this thing is really there on the velocity radar image. Quite fascinating. Let's take a look here. We're going to flip radars here because again, this thing is still observed. And my guess is here is they're probably still PDSing this. If they haven't already, that would be my guess that they probably are. There it is right there. So there it is. Again, it looks like it bited. So there's Bradford. It looks like a little town there. We'll see here if it might have struck Bradford head on. Because we did notice a little bit of an uptick there in the so just past north of Bradford. Bradford just missed it, but if you go all the way up on what is that 721, Ohio 721, just past yeah, absolutely Clayton now. So again, folks, this is the same storm that this is the same one that produced that pretty decent trail that we were watching back in Union City. Not only that, but we also got this guy down here Coming up on Richmond, Indiana. Certainly has some rotation right now. Nothing being observed, but could be something that has to be watched. And now keep in mind, folks, that if this tries to hold up a bit more, we're now going to go to the Dayton area, which back in 2019, I remember tracking a very similar type of situation uh, that they had there. And they had an EX4 that passed right around the Trotwood area. And of course, mind you, it was like 10 o'clock at night or something. It was May of 2019, I remember. In fact, in my other computer, I still have the radar scans from that saved. And I remember because at the time, the station I was working at, we weren't expecting that they were going to come that far to the east. And so I actually got called in and it had it was just one of these situations where the thing just kept tracking and they kept extending the warning. They kept extending the watch throughout the night there. And so we'll see, maybe we get a kind of a repeat of that. But I think for the most part, kind of had an idea there was going to be some activity today. All right, let's take a look here. We're going back to our good friend over in Delaware, again, coming up on a populated center here. Delaware, Ohio. Radar indicated, but when we were taking a look at it, it looked pretty decent on the radar imagery coming out of the Columbus secondary site here. Let's see maybe if we can't get that radar image back up. We'll see if I can locate it. But yeah, we were taking a look there. It was pretty good on the rail there. Just blended right in. I knew I wasn't going crazy. All right, what are we looking at here? Yay. Sideways. All right. So what we were looking at was possible rotation here coming right up on Delaware. Oh man, yeah, Delaware. And Delaware is a pretty decent sized city. That is certainly rotating. And folks in Delaware are going to have a very, very, very close call here. So, in case you guys don't realize, we're getting into here's Columbus, Ohio. This is not a far drive. If there's no traffic, you can make this drive in less than, depending upon where you are in Columbus, because like I said, the city limits are really weird. But yeah, you can probably make that drive in about 30 minutes. Maybe not even that long if there's no traffic. Here's Westerville, another kind of big suburb, Powell, Dublin, and New Albany. And again, here's Columbus, Gahanna, Upper Arlington, Grove City. So again, we're looking in the metro at this point. And Delaware is a pretty decent sized city. I believe. I can't remember, and I'm one of the people who does the census stuff on Wikipedia. Uh, and then I can't remember. I think it's about 40,000. Anyways, all right, let's take a look here. So this is coming up on Delaware. What in the world are we looking at? Okay, I see rain. I see rain. I see equipment. What am I looking at? What am I looking at, Michael? Help me out here. What am I looking at? Give me a hint. Give me a hint. The Abominable Snowman. Yeti. That's a light. Am I looking at damage? Where are we at here? Okay. Mountain Valley, Blue Springs, Brookshire. Aha. Got it. Okay. So we are back out in Indiana. Here we are. Let's take a look. All righty. So we got Michael out here who's sitting, driving out into the storm. Lucky. See, I'm one of those people. I always have I'm always conflicted. I like to stay and watch them, but I also love to go out. So yeah. So again, certainly a stormy night, even around the Indianapolis metro area. Storming there, some hail. But I will say we haven't noticed kind of a drop off on the hail reports a little bit. In fact, this is kind of very interesting that that's what's happened. So let's take a look here. Look at that. All right, let's see. This is going to be from Bradford, Ohio. We were looking at that one earlier. Strong trade on progress. That was from about what, 9 o'clock their time. So that would have been about 8 o'clock where I am. So potentially recent Bradford. Man, we are all over the place tonight, and it is observed coming up on Piqua. There you go, Covington. There's Bradford, that video you just saw right there. Here it is. Take a look at that. All right. So now we'll see here if it continues, because again, it was looking pretty good. I mean, like I said, it's coming right up on Piqua. It does look like it is weakened a little bit, so we'll see here if it manages to hold on to Piqua here. All right, that being said, give me a quick second here. I got to recheck something here. All right. So let's see what he got up here. So Delaware County is sending a bunch of units to Randolph County. Delaware County and Randolph County assisting in the major damage of the Winchester Walmart. All right, so major damage. Major damage. Again, we've been seeing some strong trails tonight. And it looks like, well, this is a weird signature. Well, we'll just have that's interesting. Let's take a look here. Where are we at? There's our trail. Okay, it does look like it is kind of, it looks like it may have fallen apart here. Right before Piqua. Impressive. Again, they're still tagging it as observed, but it looks like we might have lost it here. I do want to keep an eye on this Delaware one. These Columbus Metro ones have a tendency to just quickly fire up. And like I said, I mean, looking at this thing, I look at that. So again, this is Delaware, Ohio, Sunbury. North side of the metro. I mean, folks, this was looking really good. I'm hard impressed that no one has seen anything. Because look at that. You can see it's right there. Whatever, there's not something on the ground there. It's something very close to being on the ground. This is coming right up on, yeah, it's going to pass on the north side. Because obviously it's going to miss Columbus unless it just drops straight down to the south, which would be very interesting. But Newark, again, another big suburb there. We also got, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, but looking at this, I mean, looks like I said, it looks like there may be something going on here. That's we'll keep an eye on here. Let's take a look. Yeah. So, do we have anything on the ground at the moment? No, the answer is no. But we might soon. They might soon. They're still tagging it as radar indicated. Certainly going to be something worth watching. Well, I mean, it's always worth watching. But all right, let's take a look here back at our friends over in Piqua. How we doing? All right. All righty, we got some hail all the way down in Indiana. All right. So let's take a look here, though. We got a little bit of hail, but like I said, the hail is kind of dropped off. We also got another tornado warning that is all the way down in the Gosport area. Again, this one looks to be a little bit more of a kind of QLCS type of setup, albeit very small. Let's see how this thing played out. Let's take a look here. This might just be a little spin up that's being indicated. I want to double check on this thing. Have this thing line up? Possibly. We'll keep an eye, but I don't think. Yeah, this one appears to be a little bit more of a little spin up type of setup with this one. So that one might not be on the ground for too long. But what I am, like I said, what I'm very curious about is this one up here in Delaware, Ohio. I mean, it looked like it had the signatures, even if for a little bit. And there's still radar indicating it. I mean, it's very interesting. We would know by now if there was something on the ground. I mean, Delaware is not a town; it's a city. I mean, this is a very populated area, very populated area. Traffic lights everywhere. Once you get off the interstate, it is traffic light city. All right, Hot Springs. Observe Trail all the way down in Arkansas, right? Hot Springs, Arkansas. So yeah, Hot Springs. All right. We will flip to that one here in just a second. Let's take a look at what that one's doing here, all the way down in Hot Springs. But I'm telling you what, this I'm still shocked. Wait a quick second. I have family around this area. Oh, I forgot. Anyways, yeah, I'm very interested. Like I said, and this thing is so close. I mean, this thing has to be producing a trail. I can't see. We'll come back to the Little Rock one, don't or the Hot Springs one. Don't worry, everyone. But this one, like I said, I'm very intrigued by that. No one has. I mean, this if this thing isn't producing a trail, it's very close to producing a trail. I mean, there's got to be power. I mean, there's got to be. I mean, there has to be something at this point. I would imagine. Well, like I said, we would know. This is not an empty area. Um, Give us another scan here too. In the meantime, I want to switch back and I'm gonna check out that the good old Hot Springs one. They got an observed trail down there in Hot Springs. It is observed with large hail and fur trail damaging. Oh, man, I mean, look at this thing. This is like I said, this is Delaware, Ohio. Or now we're just past Delaware, we're heading to Sunbury now. Another one of the kind of affluent suburbs there of the Columbus area. Uh, yeah, that is, and that's close. Like I said, I'm surprised it has not dropped trail yet. Like, and it would be interesting to see. I bet if you were there, you would see just a very, very. Uh, you probably would see. I mean, just a heck of a lower. All right, let's go back over to our good friend around the Piqua area. Still got a little bit of that hook there, but it looks like it's kind of taking a quick little break. We'll see if that thing maybe tries to recycle. How about our good friend over in Richmond? It's seen better days. All right, let's take a look at a little QLCS there one, I bet. Yeah, let's take a look at this one down in the Hot Springs area, south side of Little Rock. Let's see how this guy's doing. Pretty decent. We got ourselves. Hey, oh wow, look at that. Yeah, that's trim, all right. Look at that. Not only that, but you got 2.7-inch hail to go with it. How long was this? This is about yeah, this was just a few moments ago. That's awesome. Look at that. So a little bit of hail to go with it. I've seen boy. Let's see if we can pull it up on the this is it right there. Right over Hot Springs Village. So here's our correlation. Here's our little trail right in here. And up to Blocker. I'm gonna go with Blucher. Blocker. Change my mind. Blucher. I'm gonna go with Blucher. Anyways, you see here, this guy holds up a little bit. Certainly a nice little, good little storm going on there. We also got this one down here. I'm going to try to develop into something here. Let's take a look at how this one's doing structurally. And it needs a little bit of work, but that one could try to become something. And then, yeah, this little guy, but again, not very strong. But this is certainly the big boy in Arkansas right now. It's that one. But I am still vested in this one up here in Delaware, as I am very curious. Wow. I mean, like I said, folks, it doesn't get any more. I mean, that's pretty defined. That is very, very defined. Alrighty, let's see here. We got ourselves a good old-fashioned skew T plot. Devoted to saving and protecting the light. Tornado threat is expected to continue overnight across parts of Ohio. A strong tornadoes being possible. It's likely a historic outbreak. Certainly there's enough little veering there. Oh yeah, we are on the high end on the skew T. Uh, where is this out of? That's out of the Wilmington office. And that is a very, very that is a very is this for, oh, that's for Friday. Oh no, that's still, wow. Sorry. Yeah, that's pretty good. 2%, a lot of cape there. The effective layer STP was really high. Sphere handle being the main thing, though, but I wish I could see that a little bit better at the top of my. Yeah, certainly backed. Oh, they got the share 21. Sorry, oh, that's pretty high. Huh. All right then. Well, if this thing over around Delaware is any indication for you, I mean, like I said, I'm surprised nothing is coming out of this thing yet. Uh, I mean, like I said, we would know because it would be, like I said, it's about right over a town, a couple of them. It looks like looks like they're gonna probably, they haven't extended this one yet, south of the Akron area, that we were watching earlier. And the Pickle one also has been extended as to a severe thunderstorm warning. We will, I think at this point, we're going to hang with this one here around the Columbus area. And like I said, there is some action going on down in Little Rock. I mean, I'm looking at this. Looking at this, this is what I find is interesting. Looking at this, you tend to not see this type of a radar setup, and there not be a tornado, especially given how close it is. I mean, to the radar site. Of course, then again, these little radars, everything looks like an F5, but this is a very, very defined rotation here. And even if, I mean, I guess I'm just surprised that there hasn't been anything yet. Coming down through the wire, it's still radar indicated. And when we did flip it over, but again, this too is right at the edge of the radar, usefulness. It doesn't look like much on the Wilmington radar. It really doesn't. And we don't see any drop off in the correlation. But mind you, folks, we're looking, a pretty good distance away from the radar. So it's just interesting that we're able to see a completely different picture on this radar image than we are on the WSR-88. But this is a very it just has the look of, even if it wasn't a strong, it just had to look like it dropped something. And maybe not a long track, but from what it was looking like, especially back up around here, it certainly looked like there might have been something. I mean, if nothing else, this was a very, very, if this would have been daytime and you would have been looking at this, you probably would have seen, probably some rapid rotation. Relatively speaking, obviously, at the cloud base. Maybe nothing on the ground, maybe nothing on the ground, but certainly, you would have looked up and you probably would have seen, that wall cloud kind of rotating a little bit there. That's what that at least tells me. I guess it's just surprising that this ended up not dropping anything. And like I said, we would have known because, again, this is a really populated area. I mean, that's Route 37. I mean, it's right over Sunbury, just south of Sunbury. So, I mean, I guess if you were there, you'd have a pretty good view. But they're tagging it as radar indicated, and they're extending that into Licking County. That's going to include the city of Newark. New River, Ohio, which is right here. It's kind of like a small little. It's like a well, not a small. It's like a satellite city almost of Columbus, albeit on a much smaller scale. But it's about 50,000 people. It's a pretty populated area too. You come up on 16, you come out there out of Zanesville. It doesn't take you too long to get there. And it's a four-lane highway from Stockton. Well, from actually, I think it's from about Dresden, not Dresden, but near the Dresden exit down to Newark. It's about a four-lane highway. Really nice drive. But anyways, I mean, this thing is certainly rotating. Ah, boy. Wow. Like I said, it hasn't dropped anything yet. That's what's fascinating about it. Is to see this kind of a signature, and that's kind of starting to drop off a little bit. But I mean, like I said, to see that kind of a signature, you know, listen, I worked around it, and I worked around this there for quite a while, and I can say I had never seen the time that I was down there. I had not seen a signature like that in from this radar. I had seen one that was from another radar, but it's interesting on this particular radar. Uh, yeah, I mean, like I said, there might not be anything on the ground, but it's very it's very interesting. Now let's go into Licking County, and the question is, will it hold my own place of Zanesville? Interesting. And that's a pretty solid mesocycle. Well, I mean, here's actually an area that isn't quite as favorable. Now, when you saw that QT chart, that was Wilmington. That was this area right here. But we don't see those conditions quite as much further off to the east. Nonetheless, the watch has been expanded. So it looks like, how's this guy doing? Let's see how our one storm is doing. There it was. Wow, you see that? It's kind of apart. Look at that. This was the one that we were watching that was around the Greenwich area, New Haven and Willard. We were tracking that one earlier. Look at how that just fell apart. Look at that. Fell right apart. So now the question is going to become, are these storms going to potentially outrun the, oh, because let's see here, we're expecting that the way it will destabilize, but not to the scale that we've seen out of the West. That is damage. Moving on here. Significant structural damage in Lakeview, Ohio. Yeah, we determined Lakeview. That's out again. That's that area that we were watching that one, and that is. Yeah, like I said, looking at this, we're looking at least. I would venture to say, just based off what I say, maybe an EF3. Higher than that, I'm not sure without seeing anything else, but that's typically not damage you would see from an EF2 or something lower, especially something weaker. We can pull it back up. I want to see if there's any more. I'm not sure what that is. I mean, it just looks like a roof. I don't know where the rest of the house is or the rest of the structure is. It just looks like a roof. Uh, I'm not sure if that's a trailer by it. But like I said, I'm looking at it and I see it. It's trippy because again, the trees haven't really bloomed yet. Trees, though, I mean, they look to be okay. So typically, you would expect some of those trees to be damaged. But you see, now here's the weird thing. Like I said, we're looking at this and you see that light post is still standing, or whatever that is, to the right there. It's still now again, we see that sometimes with these trenders. I mean, some things can withstand it, but well, because now here's the other question: were those cars there? Well, they would have had to have been. Because we would have imagined if it was a really strong trail, those cars would have been picked up and moved. If we were looking at like an EF4 or an EF5, we would expect that those vehicles would have been moved. Uh, in fact, even with some EF3 damage. But that in mind, we don't know. We don't know, about being there. However, that structure, like I said, it is pretty much done. But we don't know what that structure was. But like I said, for me, the wild card is that I see a tree right by what I think is a roof, uh, missing a house. Uh, but I see a tree that doesn't look like it got that much damage per se. But then again, hard to tell. And then I see those cars not moved, but then I'm seeing a lot of damage. Now, if this is a touristy area, I would imagine they'd probably have, like cabins and stuff like that. Um, my guess is that some of this stuff might be, because again, this is, they're by a lake, so there may be some lake type of houses and structures there. So perhaps these aren't built. See, as much as I've been through Ohio, I've actually ironically never been down to Indian Lake. So I'm not 100% certain as to what exactly we're looking at here. But when I look at that, I would venture to say that, there's another tunnel probably right up on our banner. Um, I would venture to say, though, but looking at those pictures of Indian Lake, now that's a different story. Now those trees have got some debarking going on. Like I said, I'm still going to go with EF3 damage, but whether it's a high end or low end, it's difficult for me to tell about being there. Uh, like I said, I'm not quite sure of what we're looking at structurally, and that's something that will have to be taken into account. Are we looking at beach houses, which tend to not be built as like almost like a cabin, or are these, solid structures? Just because sometimes a structure looks big too doesn't mean, for example, warehouses. Warehouses are very easy for a tornado to destroy, even though they look massive. They're a lot easier for a tornado to destroy because, frankly, they're just a struggle, so it doesn't take much to push them down. Well, I mean, it does, but you get what I'm saying. And so, without knowing the exact, what we're looking at here, it's certainly damage. And like I said, it's certainly not a weak tornado damage. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it's a question of, of course, the scientist is was it EF3 or could have been EF4 damage? I don't think it would have been EF5 damage because if it was EF5 damage, we would have expected nothing to really be around. So you know, and from the pictures that we saw, it was probably certainly kind of a wedge tornado, or at least a cone tornado. So that would be a good indication of perhaps, I would like to say, typically you start seeing wedges around EF3. You can have some high end EF2s getting wedge tornado, but generally once you start dealing with wedges, you sometimes could be dealing with multi vortexes, and those tend to be high end EF2 and above. Typically, you won't see an EF1 looking like a wedge trail. That is not a wedge trail. Well, oh no, I stand corrected. I thought we were looking far closer to that. Let's take a look. So that thing picked up a ton of dirt. Do we know where this one was? Now stay on the video, but I wish I knew where we were on this. That is okay. That's different. That is yeah, yeah, like I said, I'm thinking that's certainly that is not an EF1. I mean, you can look at the way that it's rotating too. I mean, it kind of has this almost, the rotation of it. If you look at it, it almost looks like it's not like this. It's kind of like this a little bit, and you tend to kind of see that with these really strong, with these stronger tornadoes. It kind of has more of that. Uh, this is Freiburg. See Freiburg, Ohio. Freiburg. Gotta double check where that was. I mean, like I said, I'm looking at that. I mean, because like I said, if you look at that rotation, in fact, when that video replays, if you could kind of enlarge it a little bit, uh, Freiburg, that's Ogilvie County. Okay, so that looks like that is going to be that Wapakoneta one that we were talking about, the second one that dropped down. But if you could find that video again, I just want to rewatch it. But if you could put it on if you could make it big on the screen, that would be really helpful. Because I'm looking at this on a computer, my computer monitor. Uh, let's take a look here. Police confirmed Winchester, the Indiana State Patrol. Three people killed. Well, yes, that was that Winchester. That was a different trail. The video that you saw was the one up around Lima. This one was the one that we just saw that report of was from a storm that had happened way kind of on Muncie. Give me a quick second here. It was right here. Winchester. So wind damage in Winchester. Pictures of video report likely trail not confirmed. Time estimated by radar. So this is what that one was, and that was one that we were tracking a little bit, and then it moved just past Union City, and now we are seeing. I mean, this might take a day or two to survey. This might not be all done tomorrow, uh, but let's take a look here. I'm looking at this photo here, which certainly got down power lines along, and this is where is this? Do we happen to have a location, Mike, along this one? Uh, it's like I said, it looks like tremor damage. I just wish we knew. Oh, this is down in Arkansas. Okay. Then that might have been the yeah, Little Rock. That might have been the Hot Springs one. Uh, Crane Creek. There's Crane Creeks there. There's a lot of Crane Creeks. But yeah, no, that good picture. Thank you for that. It certainly looked like it might have been a little bit of a weak trail, but I think tonight we've certainly seen that the stronger trails have really been interestingly in Ohio. I mean, well, not interestingly. I mean, like I said, Ohio gets some goodies, but they weren't expected to be around the Ohio area. I mean, there were, but the strong ones are kind of more so expected to be down around here in Arkansas. In fact, right now we are seeing, these guys are kind of rotating a little bit here. Uh, you got a little hook here. This one is a radar indicated, but it's mainly hail, and hail was going to be kind of the big event with this whole thing anyway. Uh, but the trail expectation was generally kind of more or less this area. I mean, the trails weren't going to be possible anywhere along the frontal line here, but uh, it's fascinating nonetheless. Um, let's see if we can't get our. Oh boy, that thing fell apart. Let's take a look here. How we doing up here with this? It does look like we might have lost our little trail signature here of this one up in Delaware. Whoa! Sorry about that. Let's take a look here if we can't still see a little bit there, but this one certainly looks like it's kind of lost some of its organization too. We'll give it another minute here though. This one, again, certainly looks like it could very well be something on the ground with this. Again, we see this tightening up here, but it's not quite as large as what we had seen with our earlier ones. Uh, I think this is probably going to be it if it is it. Uh, but right here out of Millerstown, heading kind of north. So it looks like it'll be just north of Urbana. But I will say it does not look quite as yeah. I mean, it doesn't look to be quite as large of a circulation as what we saw with the earlier ones. That being said, there's still certainly a circulation there nonetheless. That's the one I wanted to see again. All right, so this one was south of Wapakoneta, and yeah, that was a very that was yeah that's power flashes there. Like I said, it's that that you look at how it's rotating, you can see how it kind of almost looks like it's rotating kind of like this rather than like this. You can even see that little little side vortice that kind of spins up from that. I mean, so that was probably definitely. Uh, I mean, yeah, that's a strong trail. Now again, I guess I would venture EF3, but you know that's speculation about actually seeing much damage. But I mean, just looking at that, you can see how quickly it filled itself in. And then, like I said, the way when it was rotating, like I said, I mean, see, they got a little spiral vortex that kind of comes out the side. Uh, see, they got a couple of them there. We tend to see that with really strong ones, and I mean, and it's also kind of got this slight. I mean, it looks like it's kind of digging a little bit. You know, I mean, EF3, it could be an EF4 to be honest, but we don't know. I don't know without actually being there and seeing what all and the distance we're looking at here. But I mean, I would venture at least EF3 with that. Maybe not its whole life, but certainly for at least a little bit. I mean, like I said, I see that little you start seeing those little kind of side vortices spinning off it. That tends to be a signal that you're dealing with a pretty uh, uh, a pretty significant trial. One that ain't joking around. Good old you know so it was a little bit narrow too, which is okay. They don't always have to be wedge straddles, for that matter. All right, so we're gonna kind of stick here just a few more minutes with this Urbana one, and I think for the most part, it looks like here that our Delaware one is still kind of holding out a little bit. We'll probably go for a few more minutes, and then we'll probably, we'll see what's going to happen here. Obviously, we'll still be watching these through the night, but greatest triple threat, Central and Northwest Ohio. Or Southwest Ohio. Yeah, I would venture to say absolutely with the way things are going. It looks like that Trento Watch was expanded simply as kind of like a runaway ramp with some of these storms. If that makes any sense, some of these storms might have been, strong enough that it might take them a little while to kind of weaken down. I don't think the atmosphere is very conducive up around the Pittsburgh area right now. That might try to change. It could destabilize a little bit, but I think for right now, that's not really expected to be the case. Um, I do think this front is as this front begins to kind of push its way down a little bit here. Obviously, Northwest Ohio, Northern Indiana, pretty quiet now. I think we're going to kind of keep seeing this front trying to drop down a little bit more. So, I mean, because obviously I'm looking at that storm. This is the one, if I remember correctly, this was the one that produced that pretty big tornado that we were watching up around New Washington in the Shiloh area. Uh, an hour or two ago? I mean, it just fell apart. I mean, it's still going. Don't get me wrong; it's still bubbling, but uh, yeah. But I mean, it's still bubbling a little bit there. Uh, but overall, you can see how it's transitioned to kind of more of this embedded type of thunderstorm setup over here. Still, certainly some heavy rain and maybe even a little bit of hail with some of these storms, but this is kind of where the boundary of the the really supercell storms kind of is right now. Not to say that couldn't change, but right now that's the way things are sitting. You can see how these storms are kind of weakening a bit. Now, mind you, like weakening relatively speaking. But hail is certainly still a thing. We're seeing a lot of 1 inch hail reports up around Beavers Falls. I got a best friend that lives up around that area. Been there. In fact, Moon Township really built up that area. Mars, Cranberry. Cranberry is a really built up area over the past 20 years or so. It's impossible to drive. But we see these little guys kind of bubbling here. I would venture to say, but like I said, looking at what happens here to our I mean, this thing is still rotating. What's weird though is trying to warning it. It seems like it's off a little bit, but then again, we don't know. But right there. So this thing is still going. But you see, when I start seeing this, though, it begins to raise maybe some red flags that there's going to start being some interference here, and that could start to upset some of these supercells. Some of the reason why these guys were doing pretty good back here was because there wasn't really anything obstructing per se them. They kind of had free reign, but I start seeing this, that starts to make me wonder here if that's going to start interfering with the solid mesocycling that we got going on now. Not right now, obviously, but maybe in the next half hour or 20, maybe next half hour or hour, if this is going to start to maybe impact it a little bit. Doesn't mean that the whole thing is going to be done, but it does raise something. And this is Zanesville, pouring down rain there right now. Uh, Boy, I bet the streets there, some of the streets in town, really fill up, uh, plummet really nicely uh, for a little bit. It doesn't last too long, but it is always kind of fun. But we got this guy, like I said, Urbana. And this one is probably, like I said, I mean, again, probably have one of those situations where we have, potentially just kind of a low-hanging wall cloud rotating pretty well. But again, nothing on the ground right now. I think it's also dark, so it's a little bit trickier to tell. Like I said, we were watching that Delaware one. That's the one over here now in northern Licking County. We're going to go over down to Arkansas here because, again, that was the area that was kind of highlighted. SBC had a mesoscale discussion. I think they're expecting that strong trails might be possible here now. Oh, hey, look at that. All right, so this is a radar indicated thing here, and this is actually a really good structure supercell, uh, at least from the looks of it here. Again, nothing really interfering with it. Got kind of this nice little blob here and this nice little hook that extends down from it. So the SPC had highlighted that Storm Prediction Center. They're the ones who do the watches and put out the outlooks. So they were expecting that it's very possible we could have a strong tornado here over the next, what was it, 30 or 50 minutes? I couldn't see from where I was, because I was leaning back when it was up there. But this is probably what they're talking about right here. Is this storm? I think that we're looking at this thing. Let's see how we've been doing over the past few radar scans. All the while, don't forget that we had all that excitement up in Ohio too. But for right now, that excitement up in Ohio at the moment appears to be kind of toned down at least a little bit compared to what we're seeing. Like I said, our Delaware storm doesn't look quite as defined as it did. Uh, yeah, I mean, they're thinking that this might try to do some more stuff here over the next oh, what hour or so. I think from what their discussion was talking about. So we'll kind of keep an eye on it here for a few scans, but so we got this little outflow right there. That's see how that impacts. It's a little hard to see, but there's a little thing right there. We'll see what that does. See if that negatively impacts this thing or not. Otherwise, I mean, this is a rainy, stormy. Look at that! Look at these two just kind of ran right into each other. And boom. This is a saturated atmosphere right now. Look at that. It's going to be a noisy night up there in CRC. Uh, Very noisy night. Very interesting. Uh, Let me. What's this guy? Who are you? Who are you? Let's take a look. Oh, all right. Oh, yeah. So this is what I mean by a little spin up trail here thing. And of course, you'll see here, but again, so we got this kind of line right here, and then we have this little shearing area. So right up in the front, you can see it right there. A little bit of inflow and a little bit of a spin up here. Now we'll see what this guy is going to do. It's interesting that the tornado warning is way out ahead. Is this an old? No. It's interesting that the warning doesn't include the actual area where the rotation is right now. That's actually looking kind of decent. It's a pretty good return here. We'll see what this guy does. There it is. All right. There we go. That makes more sense. I was wondering why there wasn't a trail warning up for that. All right, let's take a look here. We're going to follow really quickly here for a few moments, see how this guy is. Like I said, that, right there's your little thing. Right there, you can kind of see it a little bit. Uh, there it is. Again, these tend to not last very long. We'll see how this one does, though. We'll see how this one does. Based on what we've seen tonight, I wouldn't be surprised, but these little guys tend to not have the easiest time in their life. I do want to see how we're doing with this little guy down here, and then we'll. It's still going. It's trying to get itself organized here. And they remember last year. Uh, there was a storm just like this, and it was, it kind of cycled itself a little bit, and then right when it got ready, it was North Little Rock, I believe, and it passed right over. I remember watching it on the camera. You could see the wall cloud as it began to drop down. It was right. I mean, it was pretty interesting how it just waited. This one looks like it may be trying to do something too. So we'll give this one a shot here for a few moments, and then we'll probably have to wrap this up. I mean, we've been going for what, 3.5 hours. Um, so we'll see what this one is going to do. Again, we're thinking this one could maybe really try to develop into maybe a kind of a long track supercell thunderstorm. At least that's what we got kind of gathered from the SBC statement here. Yeah, we were taking a look at that one. They have it observed now, which makes sense. Again, like I said, a little spin up trail on that one coming right up into I can't remember that county name, but that was the one that we had up a few moments ago. It is now observed. And we'll take a little bit of a look at it here, pop it up here. Again, little, right up on a line here. You pull it up here, you'll see what I mean. It's right here. It's this little notch right here. Again, it's right up on the radar site. Again, got a very clear look at it here. Looks to be kind of a slightly somewhat of a QLCS type of situation. They're saying it's observed, and the hair's pretty low on this. And one thing I do want to see is well, let's take a look here. I do want to see what they are tagging this thing with here. They got an observed shadow. They don't indicate a rotation. They got that radar. Technology. All right. Normally, I'd expect to have more than that, but this time around, uh, well, I probably just jinxed it now. If it is here on the ground, it's probably this little thing right there. We'll see what that does over the next couple of scans or so. But my guess is here is that's probably going to be, like I said, not a very long term one. So this, like I said, really the interest, and I can kind of see the interest of it. It's just a pretty decent storm right here, but now it looks like it doesn't look quite as good as it did earlier. Let's see how it's looking on the. Yeah, I mean, it's got the rotation there, and I mean, it could very well get itself better organized. It certainly has the potential of possibly becoming a very decent type of supercell. Well, I mean, it kind of already is, but maybe of doing some activity there. All right, a few more pictures here, and my guess is here is we will probably wrap this up a little bit here as boy, we've had what now? A 3.5 hour long party here. Rotation's still ongoing, but again, not quite as defined with this trail. All right, here's what we're looking at. Let's take a look at that picture. All right, let's see what we got. All right, several trees damaged to roofs and vehicles. Person I spoke with says the home passed. The police cars escaped in. It'll be live at 10. Okay, so that's all right. Selma in Delaware County. I'm assuming it's Selma, Indiana. Is that correct here? Is that where the Winchester? Oh, yeah, yeah, yes. That's the Muncie one. All right, so this is video. So let's pause it here for a second. Let me flip off if I can here. Let me get you guys kind of brought up to speed here on what we've been tracking. So that picture that you're seeing there, we had a supercell that came out, developed north of Muncie. I don't remember what number of storm it was that we were talking about, but it developed north of Muncie, really got itself organized, and produced tornado down around the Winchester area. That tornado then continued down south of Union City, and now it's the one that I believe here has kind of recycled. It got very close to Piqua, and now it's over by Urbana. But for right now, we know that this one produced at least one tornado, and that's or at least two tornadoes. One of them near Selma, one of them from Winchester to Union City. Whether or not the Selma and the Winchester one were the same tornado, a little uncertain right now, but from the looks of it, they might have been two separate tornadoes, but from the same storm. So there's some damage that you're looking at now. Again, the Winchester one looked pretty decent there. The Selma one, probably was I think was the first one on that particular storm there. So some minor damage there as well. Then the big one, the big ones that we've seen tonight were up here in Ohio, and the first one was one that came out of Mercer County. We were actually talking about some storms down in Illinois when we caught this one up here in Salina, Mercer County, up here in Ohio. And that one, I believe, is, I believe, the quick where Spiceland, Indiana is it happened to be up around here. But regardless, the one that we saw and we were tracking up here was pretty decent storm that it produced this little tornado, or not a little tornado, it produced a pretty decent tornado. That tornado looked like it lifted just north of Salina. And then we had a new one touch down. And that one looked to be pretty big too. In fact, I think that might have been I think we did have a video of one of those ones, but it's all right. We don't have to. I mean, well, you can send it to me, but I don't have to go over it right now. But yeah, I think we did have a video from that one. Anyways, like I said, these two might have been two separate tornadoes because it did look like there was a little bit of weakening. When it was going by Salina, we did kind of look like it lost some of the signature, but it came right back by the time we got up here to the Auglaize County border. And again, that was when large tornado was on the ground. We then saw that carry over to about near the Wapakoneta area, kind of a rural. But then it looked like when we were watching it on the radar, it really fell apart. I mean, this thing, it collapsed. At the same time, we watched as a new area of rotation developed around Freiburg, and that was that video that you saw that we looked at a couple of times of that tornado that was kind of really trying, kind of had that little multi-vortex thing going on there. And this would have been the video from the state of Ohio. Southeast of Wapakoneta. So there it is. So this would have been the one that had, so the second tornado collapsed near Wapakoneta. And then we had that new development, and that was that one. So it was just southeast. Again, that one looked particularly strong. I mean, looking at the video and what we were looking at the radar, I would just say, like I said, I would ballpark it right now EF3, but without knowing the specifics of everything that we're looking at and actually being there, little trippy to tell. But that one was certainly a strong tornado. As a couple of these have been tonight. It wasn't the only one, but the video that we saw of that one, that had the look of that had the look of not a little tornado. Uh, Obviously, but the structure of it looked pretty intense. So that one then continued, and it continued down to Indian Lake, Russell's Point. This is a state park down here. Again, ironically, I've never been here, but I've driven past it and everything. Signs all over here for it. And a lot of the damage that we were seeing was from that. However, again, without ever being there, I'm not sure if some of these were like, like beach cottages and whatnot. Because when we were looking at the damage, there was certainly some structural damage, but then there was some damage that we might have expected there to be that wasn't there, which leads me to believe that since this is a state park and this is a tourist place, some of those structures might not be the strongest. But again, I'll admit, I haven't been there, nor am I there at this time to really take a look there. But regardless, it was still the same tornado, still had plenty of damage, easily above, easily probably EF2 damage at least there. So again, long track tornado, we tracked that thing, and I mean, it looked pretty good at quite a few times. So it'll be interesting to see uh, uh, what exactly and how they're going to survey that tomorrow. And I tell you what, we went over 3.5 hours with this tonight. So dang right, we're going to talk about it once we get the damage surveys. Absolutely, we'll have a weather chat about that. We're going to take a look at that, see what all we got out of that. But that was, like I said, very strong. And so right now, a lot of the issue that you saw that we were kind of pointing out was around this area. Again, kind of rural here, but this, as you can even kind of see here on the way the maps are, uh, you can see how the roads get a bit tighter here. So this was a little bit more populated of an area: Lakeview, O'Connors Point, Avondale, Island View, Russell's Point, all of that. Definitely there. Meanwhile, we had the storm up here in Hancock County produced a tornado, but then that kind of fell apart, and we didn't really see much more from that guy. Then we had this guy up here in Seneca County, and we saw it produce a tornado, and this one was reported to be half-mile wide. Now, I'll be honest, that's an estimation measure. I don't think anybody was out there with a yardstick measuring it while it was ongoing. But from what we could tell, yes, that was, the signatures that we were seeing, that was certainly a pretty wide tornado. That tells us it was a wedge tornado. Typically, when you see a half-mile wide, that's a wedge tornado. That's that kind of classic, when you see out in Oklahoma, those big wedge tornadoes there. So far, to my knowledge, we haven't really gotten much damage reports from that one, despite the fact it was a half-mile wide. But then again, Huron County, most of the people in Huron County live up near Norwalk, not so much the lower part. And it really isn't until you get to Mansfield that you hit, in Mansfield and Ashland, that you really hit your next kind of noticeable towns. I would say noticeable, but population centers. So that then really fell apart once it made its way through Worcester. And right now, it looks like it's still kind of ongoing around the Akron area, but it does look like it has kind of restructured itself a little bit. And again, this is still kind of somewhat the same storm, to the best of my recollection. This is still somewhat the same storm, but not the same storm. I mean, it's the fiction and everything is kind of falling apart for right now with that storm. All right, then we were tracking a storm down in Winchester. Developed around Muncie. We were watching it, but we were really focused on that Indian Lake one. So we didn't really cover the Selma part much. But that one did produce a tremor around Selma. We had quite a few damage pictures from Selma, and then we had quite a few damage pictures from Winchester. You know, radar confirmed damage, and the tremor went from at least Winchester to Union City. And then it kind of began to fall apart a little bit. It looked like it tried to revamp itself coming up to Piqua, but we didn't get any reports at the time from that. And then this is it right now over here, more or less. So, and again, right now still has a little bit of rotation, but that's that. Then we had this other dude. that came out of we had another storm that made its way Delaware. Actually, I believe it might have been if I remember correctly, trying to remember 3.5 hours worth of radar data here, but I believe this was the same one that produced the Russell's Point, that big tornado around Indian Lake. And we saw it, yes, it was. And we saw it make its way to Delaware. And we were watching it, taking a look at it for a little while. We got 2-inch size hail reports, but we didn't actually get a tornado report, but it looked really impressive on the radar. So my guess is that thing was still rotating, but it probably just didn't have enough energy to get that tornado on the ground. But that thing was certainly rotating, and maybe it might have had a brief touchdown before it got to Delaware. But you know, the way that looked, that thing was producing a tornado. Uh, that's a very populated. That's a very populated area. Someone would have reported it by now. So there was that. Meanwhile, we had a few little tornadoes kind of pop up here and there. We actually started off watching some stuff around Illinois, and that stuff has since kind of conglomerated itself into more or less a line type of setup. And within that, we have really just been kind of limited to these little spin-up type tornadoes. Now, there was an observed tornado around the Mount Carmel area not that long ago, but based on the radar scans, I don't think it's still on they still have it tagged as observed, but I don't know. I don't really see too much of a strong signature, maybe right there. But again, these spin-ups tend to not last very long. Sometimes they can be up to about EF2. I've seen a few of those before. I don't think I've ever seen an EF3 spin up though. But let's say it hasn't happened, and maybe I just get my trails mixed up every now and then. We have this big guy right down here in Little Rock. Let's take a look at this big guy. All right. We got this dude right here. Now, the SPC was expecting or was suggesting that it had a possibility that this could become a long track supercell. I think that's a possibility, but it's had time to get itself organized, and it still has kind of struggled a little bit to get really organized. We still have the hook, though, absolutely, and there is the rotation in there. So if this thing is able to manage to get its act together a little bit more, this could certainly drop a tornado as it approaches the Little Rock area, and that's something that I'll be watching probably off camera here. But I think for the time being, I do think that for the most part, that's kind of the big activity we've seen today. Not to say that what down here is in Arkansas can't develop into anything either. No, that's actually still a possibility. Um, but for the most part, uh, yeah. So overall, very is honestly I think in my opinion, I think the Ohio part probably stole the show for tonight. With those especially that Indian Lake tornado and the Winchester tornado. And honestly, even that, we had three main tornadoes that we were really watching across Ohio earlier on today. And each one of them will be very interesting to take a look at when the survey is done. My guess is that this may not be something that is finished by tomorrow with the survey. You know, mind you, I believe really each one of these would belong to a separate office, so that might help speed up. But I think things like around the Indian Lake are going to take some time. It might not be until tomorrow evening I would imagine at the earliest, that we start getting an idea of what all had, exactly how strong and what type of tornado, or how strong that those tornadoes were. And again, we talked about the damage indicators earlier, and I kind of showed you an example of one of them. All that has to be done. They're going to take out drones to see if it was a continuous track. It's kind of a lengthy process. Um, but like I said, you know, yeah, it's very I mean, like I said, looking at the one, like I said, Indian Lake. I mean, like I said, I would venture to say EF3. Again, maybe a little. I don't. I again, without being there, I can't really go much of it. I mean, that's some structure. I mean, there's some pretty significant damage, and the video that we saw of that thing. But like I said, I mean, here's the deal. You got to take a look at these. Keep in mind that tornadoes have sections that like to be stronger than others depending upon how it's structured. All right. And so, that's why sometimes you can get one house standing and another house not standing. It just depends, especially if we're dealing with vortexes. But yeah, like I said, looking at this, here's the thing though, is when I look at this, I don't see completely erased structures. When we're talking about a high-end EF4 or an EF5, we expect nothing to really be left. It just wiped clean. So the reason I'm having this is, why I'm thinking this is probably more EF3 is because yes, there is significant damage. And to some of those, manufactured mobile homes, which I think we might have saw a couple of videos of those, and some of these maybe beach houses, which aren't quite built up like, as sturdy. Um, some of them are still standing. Uh, Now, again, we can have that. I mean, well, we had the Rolling Fork tornado. We had houses that were wiped away, and one block over, we have houses still standing. But again, so without being there and seeing all the damage, it is pretty difficult. But from a lot of what I've seen, though, is a lot of those structures are somewhat still standing. Now, in that case, that thing is gone. Right. So again, we're dealing with, like I said, more, you know, looking at that, like I said, it's gone. It's the Huron County. That's probably from that half-mile wide one. So again, all this has to be taken into account. I mean, that house is going to be used as a damage indicator. That tree probably, depending upon how in depth they want to get with it. I know when I do it, I take every data point I can get. Whatever that was wiped away. Was in a barn? If it was a barn, well, those get wiped away pretty easily. Uh, you know, Again, not sure about actually being there. But regardless of the fact, it's not F0 damage. Okay, it's a bit more than that. So um, I think we had a pretty interesting Trino event today in Ohio. Like I said, Ohio really kind of took the show with this today. Not to say that that's how it's going to end up being in the long term, but from what we saw, at least today, in the 3.5, 4 hours that we've been talking now, that's really where it has been focused in on. And again, as an Ohio native myself, I mean, most of these places, and like I said, all these places that we've looked at tonight, I've been, familiar with for the most part, or at least have been numerous times. So it's always kind of interesting. And like I said, I'm an Ohioan. I say we do get we get some trend outbreaks. You don't always hear about it, but we get some. You know, it's yeah, you don't have to go to Oklahoma to get a big tornado. And case in point, tonight is a good example of that. So, uh, Midwest, always has no shortage of really good tornado events. So, all things considered, I think for the most part, we're seeing things kind of quieting down a little bit in Ohio. And obviously, there's still some activity, but for right now, it doesn't appear that we're seeing quite the level of tornadic activity that we were seeing earlier. We are still seeing thunderstorm activity, and we are still seeing some severe thunderstorm warning storms that are producing hail, but we're not seeing those isolated, those separate supercells. I mean, even our guy around Delaware, which was looking really good, the same one that dropped that big trend that we were just talking about around Indian Lake, doesn't look quite as good anymore. All right, so it's entering an atmosphere. Again, the watch was extended most likely as a buffer zone, kind of as a runaway ramp for some of these stronger storms that might take a little longer to dissipate. But I think for the most part, we've probably seen the peak activity in Ohio. The watch may be extended a bit further south. I wouldn't be shocked about that. Okay. Anyways, so the what's going on in Indiana right now, like I said, it's a little bit more of a line type of setup. So we're probably going to have more of this QLCS type of spin up type of tornadoes going on. We'll have to kind of keep an eye out to see if anything maybe tries to pop up out of here. I think the atmosphere is still somewhat, it is still, it may destabilize a bit more as that cold front tries to maybe drop down a little bit more. So that could be something to watch around Louisville. Again, they actually had one of the Madison, they had a pretty decent trend earlier on today that I was tracking. Uh, they had some lingering storms from the previous morning, or from the morning. still going through. And we have this little one that right on the end, this kind of tail end one that spun up and probably produced a little bit of a trail down there. So it might not be done completely with trail probability tonight, but it might not be like what we saw up in Ohio. Meanwhile, down across Kentucky, or the other part of Kentucky, going into, again, this is kind of a continuation of that line down around Paducah. You can see we don't have that discrete supercell, just kind of have these little lines going more or less. I'd say gusty winds, maybe some hail, and possibly maybe a spin up tornado or two. And then we have the situation down in Arkansas, where again, we're continuing to watch the supercell. We'll see if this thing gets better organized, but we are probably not going to cover this one tonight as it is getting late. And this one might be interesting to watch too. Little supercell all by itself, little weak one. We'll see what this thing does here. I said the SPC put out a discussion that they were thinking that this could maybe try to produce a strong tornado or two, and I still don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. I think with the way this thing is looking, but uh, it's looking like it's a little better organized now, a little bit, but it still needs to tighten this up a little bit. But if it does, it'd be going right towards the Little Rock Metro, mainly the north part of it. Otherwise, they could have a few others try popping up. We got this guy down here. I know it doesn't look like much and it has no warning on it, but maybe if that thing can get its act together too. Otherwise, look at it, just heavy rain, hail being the big thing. All right, so I think that wraps it up for us for tonight. Woo-wee. We had a good one. About 4 hours long. That's a long weather chat, huh? All right. Well, we certainly saw some interesting stuff. Hopefully, you learned a little bit tonight. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. We're gonna know more tomorrow, and we're certainly going to talk about it on the next weather chat. Absolutely, we're going to talk about it on the next weather chat as soon as we can start getting some damage surveys back. We still have to talk about that one from Kansas that we watched last night too. So we still got to go over that guy too. So very, very interesting, very fascinating. Um, uh, but yeah, absolutely a very, very interesting evening. Again, a little early for Ohio, but not unusual. But not rare. But today's was a little earlier than usual. But hey, all right. So, anyways, I think we're good for the night. We'll pop back on depending upon how things go. But like I said, for those of you who want a little bit of homework, keep an eye on the Little Rock radar, see what comes out of there. But like I said, looking at the latest radar scans, I think this thing does have the probability of. I mean, like I said, we're seeing that rotation, but it is getting late, and we do need to wrap this particular video up. But we'll talk about it. If anything happens with this, we'll certainly talk about that tomorrow. All right. So, hope you have a good rest of your evening, everybody. And as always, as I've mentioned before, keep enjoying that weather.